Are you ready? Are you waiting or are you ready?
Yes, I am starting in a second. Sorry.
Okay, I thought you were waiting for me.
No, I am trying to. Okay, I'm starting like this. Hello, everyone, and thank you for watching Protecting Blasphemers VII. My name is Emir Onur Romanovic. I am board member and the human rights chair of our organization, CFIC, which is Canada's only national non-profit with the mission of promoting and educating the public on critical thinking, science, and secularism. In CFI Canada, we help people to make decisions based on evidence, rational thinking, and compassion. In alignment with our mission, we hold events like these to provide an opportunity to subject matter experts, intellects, and free thinkers to engage with you. While we meet today on this virtual platform, I think this will be aired on YouTube today. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and ceded territory of all the Inuit and First Nations people. We also acknowledge that not all people came here as migrants and settlers, recognizing those who were brought involuntarily as enslaved people by means of human trafficking. And we pay tribute to those ancestors and their descendants. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improve relationships between nations, peoples, and cultures, to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and to consider how we can each try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation. Now, this show was supposed to be a live show aired on YouTube, but due to technical difficulties, first we had to postpone it for a day, which was originally scheduled on World Human Rights Day, December 10th. And then today, on the 11th, due to other additional technical difficulties, we are doing it offline. So I won't be able to take questions from the chat, not today. We rely entirely on donations and memberships to allow us bring you events such as this one. So please visit our website or email me for more information about how to become a member or make a donation. Now, getting back to our talk. Protecting Blasphemy is an annual talk highlighting some of the most recent blasphemy cases of the year by atheist activists. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my speaker of this year's talk. How are you, Mubarak? Hello, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Now, let me give you a little summary of Mubarak, and then we'll continue with the outline of our event, which is going to be dedicating today's talk to a fallen atheist activist of this year, as it is our ritual. And so now, Mubarak Bala stands as one of Africa's most courageous voices for humanism and freedom. Born in a prominent Muslim family in Kano, northern Nigeria. His father, a senior member of the Islamic religious authorities. Mubarak's journey from believer to humanist activist is a testament to intellectual courage and moral conviction. As president of Humanist Association of Nigeria, Mubarak was a beacon of hope for countless atheists and humanists across Africa who live in shadows of religious persecution today. But his advocacy came at an extraordinary cost. In June 2024, his own family forcibly detained him in a psychiatric ward for 18 days, deeming his atheism as a sign of mental illness. Now, digest this. Yet, this traumatic experience only strengthened his resolve. In April 2020, Mubarak was arrested in Kaduna for Facebook posts. What followed was a harrowing ordeal that would test the limits of human endurance and fate of injustice. He was held without a charge for 462 days, over 15 months, that is, denied access to his lawyer for 5 months straight, and to his family during the most vulnerable period of his life. His wife was pregnant when he was arrested. Their son, born 6 weeks later, he would not hold his child for years. While in prison, Mubarak endured solidarity confinement, was denied proper health care for serious conditions, including heart problems, high blood pressure, and was forced to worship in ways that violated his deepest convictions. In December 2021, Nigeria's Federal High Court, the Supreme Court, ruled his detention illegal and ordered his immediate release, but the order was ignored by local. Stark demonstrated, how powerless even the highest courts can be against religious extremism. In April 2022, under circumstances many believe involved intimidation and coercion, Mubarak pleaded guilty to charges of blasphemy, and he was sentenced to 24 years in prison. A sentence the humanist community immediately contested as contrary to their legal strategy. Even his own lawyers suspected that he had been pressured into a plea with false promises of leniency. Yet the international humanist community never abandoned. Organizations include Humanist International, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, International Center for Inquiry, and countless individuals worldwide campaigned tirelessly for his freedom. United States Commission on International Religious Freedoms took up his cause. European governments applied pressure. The Tam Lantos Human Rights Commission advocated for his release. And after 4 years of imprisonment, in May 2024, an appeals court reduced his sentence to 5 years. And finally, in January 2025, Mubarak walked. Though he remained in grave danger, and he is still in the country. So, with support from German government and humanist community, he was relocated to Bavaria, Germany, where he received a fellowship through the Humanist Society's shelter. Today, Mubarak continues his advocacy for exile, having paid an unimaginable price for the simple act of expressing his conscience. He received the Garden Gross Humanist of the Year award from Humanist Society of Scotland in 2024 while in prison. And Nobel laureate Wals Soyinka has called his case emblematic of Nigeria's plague of religious extremism. So his story reminds me that freedom of thought is not guaranteed anywhere. It must be fought for, defended, and sometimes sacrificed. His courage in the face of state persecution, family rejection, and years of unjust imprisonment stands as an inspiration to all who believe that no one should be punished for their crime. And this comes from someone who was also imprisoned 3 years in prison in Turkey due to religiously motivated convictions and still has 10 to 15 years of blasphemy charges waiting in line. So I feel you, brother. Now, before we go into the blasphemy cases of 2025, we have a tradition, and it is time to pay our respects. Every year's event is in loving memory of an atheist activist who we have recently lost. In 2029, speaking of which, today I found this in an old bag, which is a poster of our, let me do this. Let's see if it's gonna work. No, it's not working. I am not good with this AI. Okay, yeah, I found the poster of the first Protecting Blasphemers event, dated 2019. It was an in-person event back then. It was a physical event, and it was held in Victoria. So I just want to flash that poster. Now, yeah, so in 2019, the first ever Protecting Blasphemers was held in Victoria. It was a physical event, and the event was in loving memory of Andrew Guy Mulcahy of CFI Canada. He was the founder of CFI Canada Victoria branch. And in 2020, at Protecting Blasphemers II, we paid respects to another activist we lost, Ronald. Ronald was also a member of CFI Canada Victoria. In 2021, the third event was in loving memory of Tom Flynn of CFI USA. He was a great author among many other hats he had. In 2022, Protecting Blasphemers IV was in loving memory of Matthew Kovac of Atheist Alliance International. He was the social media manager of AAI, voted volunteer of the Atheist Alliance for over a decade. In 2023, our event was in loving memory of Masa Amini and Mita Iran. And last year in 2024, we honored Daniel Dan, one of the four horsemen of new atheism. And this year, we honor a personal friend to Mubarak Bala. We honor Malik Jafar. Now, Mubarak, we would like to hear more about Malik Jafar. And would you please share your memories of Malik and tell us about his...
Thank you. Thank you, Anur, for having me, and thank you for hosting this year's end of the year event. And I'm grateful for your audience. Am I very audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. I thank your audience and I thank you for hosting this. Malik is a person I haven't met personally, but then we have engaged for about, I think, 5 years until my arrest. This is a person that is coming from my kind of background, the Islamist background. He's a son of a very prominent Nigerian cleric who was advocating for Sharia, who worked tirelessly for advancement of the Islamic institutions in the region. And the Boko Haram insurgency started with his students in northern Nigeria. He was the one that instigated so much of the what I call the fanaticism in the students, especially in northeast Nigeria. And these are students that really forced him to actually realize that the cause is a suicidal cause, because he was fanaticizing them and he realized their speed is far beyond his control. And so he withdrew from that school of thought and he decided to moderate his stance and then leave his students into the wilderness. So the students went into the wilderness and they became Boko Haram. And part of the people they decided to kill was him, their teachers. So the main targets became firstly the clerics that have misled them into thinking that they could do a jihad and they could carry out the Sharia and reenact the Islamic Caliphate in northern Nigeria. But then when they realized that the state is paying more attention to their activities over the years, that these clerics withdrew. When they withdrew, the fanatics now decided, okay, they will take them out and start the jihad with them. And they did take them out over the years. This cleric in person is called Sheikh Jafar Mahmoud Adam. He was killed in April of 2007. This is 2 years prior to mainstream jihadism by Boko Haram. But even at that moment, when he was assassinated, I concluded that it has nothing, because he was killed just 2-3 days to national elections. And so people were blaming the politicians. It was a political assassination. And I said, no, if a dead body is found on my doorstep, then I shouldn't be the one to be accused. Most probably the one that dropped the dead body on my doorstep is someone that wants me to be the accused. So I said the politicians cannot kill a prominent cleric and then dump his body on the eve of elections when they are busy campaigning, spending their own monies. So I said it has to come from the fanatical side of the divide, which is the religious fanatics. And immediately they made announcements. They said clerics are being killed, and so they are launching jihads in their names. So these are people that would kill clerics and then use their names to instigate an insurrection against the government, and it failed. Then they started again in 2009. Again, it failed. That's when they were crushed almost by brute force, and almost even their leader was killed in 2009, just 2 years later. And then the man that led them into this belief is called Sheikh Adam. So his son, who is studying in Malaysia, reached out to me without actually identifying himself. He only came with questions. And I had a method. Whenever people reached out to me with questions, I assess your genuineness, I assess your capabilities, and I assess most times your level of sincerity and skepticism. So I have levels. I knew some people are too close-minded to be admitted seriously. They just want to engage or feel relevant, that they have engaged an atheist online or something like that. But then there are people that the moment you hear their questions, you hear their mindsets, you realize that maybe these are minds that are seeking knowledge. And so this person contacted me when he was in Malaysia, and he said, okay, I have this question, I have that question, I have this, I have that. And I put him in a place called, I just categorized that he is not an atheist. He's approaching agnosticism, but in a skeptical way. So I just called him skeptic. And so I saved his number as Thinker Malik. And then there are several groups of levels. They have levels like a school where we know that you belong to this category or you belong to the core atheists that can handle whatever. And then so I recommended him to join a school, a group on WhatsApp. And he joined the students, and then they started their own debatings and things like that. I haven't paid attention much to their development, but then time to time they come with their own agenda and what they could come up with. And they are holding their meetings, they are engaging, they have their online activities with their own fake names. They don't obviously use their real names for the obvious reasons. But this individual came to his family as an atheist, and that's after a few years. And the family threatened him just as they threatened me, as we always faced those kind of threats and concerns that this is what he was facing. Actually, nobody knew his background. He never introduced himself as a son of a prominent cleric. And so there was a time when the commemoration of the death of the Sheikh, I think it was a decade anniversary in 2017. And so the debate came back in one of those groups that Boko Haram was created by Sheikh Jafar, and this is his own students. This is what he taught them. And then he withdrew from this insincere school of thought, and then they killed him. So we were discussing that, and it was concluded that this man created his own monster. But then someone felt very terrible about the discussion, and he left the group in protest. That was Thinker Malik. Then someone reached out and decided to tell us that the boy is actually Sheikh Jafar's son. And so he felt really violated that his father was discussed like that. And so, well, I said, okay, we haven't known. We could have given him the courtesy, even though the man was really the author of this jihadism along with other clerics. And so I reached out to him and I asked him, I didn't know it was your father, and we could have announced in the group so people could maybe give you some respect, especially in these times that you are commemorating 10 years of his assassination. So I think he got over it over the period, and he came back. And eventually I saw him online with other names, and he was very serious. He came back to Nigeria. He has other several accounts along with other individuals of his age range, and they were very active online. But then I was taken, and then the police were inquiring about atheists and asking whether this person is is an atheist or that person is an atheist. What I normally do is I try as much as I can to protect individuals. I delete my chats. I don't allow people's chats to be known. I try as much as I can to not have direct association with individuals in Nigeria. I try to keep a distance because I'm the known atheist. I always felt most times maybe there would be a time that Boko Haram would kidnap me or ISIS or whomever. I never thought it would be the police. So I always was in the ready. I thought most probably I'll end up dead. So I try as much as I can to make it about myself. If I'm dead, it will just be me and nobody else. There wouldn't be casualties. And so it worked in a way, because when I was taken by the police, the inquiries, the investigation, checking my laptop, checking my phones, they couldn't connect me with anyone. But then they have names that they suspected, and they kept mentioning such name and this name and that name. And I would tell them, no, I don't really know about them. I don't ask them, not me. Sometimes they ask me of prominent politicians as well. And I told them it's not my place to answer questions about other individual philosophies. You could go and inquire with them. And that was it. That was when I was taken in 2020. And then I was taken to police custody for those months, April to June. And then I ended up in the prison in June. Then in around September, a warden came to me jubilating that your boy is dead, your boy is dead. I said, which boy is that? He said, that heathen, the Arni. That's the name they give non-Muslims. He said he's dead and he died by accident. Jafar, that we know he's an atheist, he's on Twitter, he's using his name, he's given his father a bad name, he's dishonoring the family, the legacy of his father. Then it connected to me that why would the police keep asking me about this person and then he ends up dead? It could happen that there is foul play. So I asked, okay, how did he die? They said car accident. I said, who said it? Is it the police or the Road Safety Commission or maybe some hospital records that may be accident and emergency where you could take people in casualties of accident? He said, none of that. I said, who? He said, the family. Then I kept quiet because I know what families do. My family took me to a psychiatric hospital in 2014. But if they knew that the news would leak out, that within that psychiatric hospital, I will find a way to leak out information, they wouldn't take me there. They would kill me. Most families would rather kill atheist individuals or maybe ladies that are behaving in a Western way than allow the dishonor go public. So immediately it clicked to me that some foul play may be in play here. Either this man is killed by his family and then they make an announcement that he has died by a car accident, or maybe they just locked him up and decided to announce his death and he's still in custody at home, because they could do that. You have private prisons at homes in northern Nigeria. Sometimes it is run by clerics, other times it's run by the family. So you could just lock somebody up perpetually, especially if it's a lady. If I was a lady, no matter what fight you have there out there in activism for my freedom, whether I'm in jail or I'm in a psychiatric hospital or I'm with my family, there is no way I would ever escape it. They'd rather kill the woman than leave her to go into the world in freedom. It has happened several times. Muslims take custody of the woman's body and her life as if it belongs to them and not her. So Malik was announced dead by his family in September, around 25th of September. And whatever investigation I could muster in prison, the inquiries I could do, I couldn't get anything beyond family announcement that he's dead. So I kept it hoping that one day we will have an investigation, a proper investigation. But then I got freedom and I decided to inquire more. The more I inquired, the less information I get. And I knew the police could be complicit in these kind of situations. So I cannot go to the police to ask for an investigation. How did this person die? I knew how atheists are being killed in northern Nigeria. We had an incident about a decade ago of the same kind of outing where an atheist was outed by his own wife that he is not a Muslim. He doesn't pray. He says there is no God. He says there is no Allah. And this is a wife that he reached a conclusion that he's safe with. He told the wife that he's an atheist, and then she decided to betray him and divulge the secret to his family. And so about a few months, maybe 6 months max later, we received the news that he has died by accident. And we investigated to realize that he was on his motorcycle and a car came and hit him, killing him instantly, and the car ran away. So it could be arranged by family members. It could be friends that feel they need to get rid of him. And it could be just individuals that have connected his name on the Facebook account, because we always use fake names. It's only I that use my real name. So it could be that, it could be the government doing what they know how to do best to politically assassinate an individual religion. So Muhammad ibn Khaldun died in 2016, and now in 2020, it was announced by the family of Malik Jafar that he's dead. And I still hope there will be more information whether it was a genuine car accident, that he was killed in a car accident. What they mentioned is that it was along with his friends. But mostly if there are prominent people that died by accident, you would see the car pictures, you see police reports, you'll see how they were conveyed into a named hospital, and then how things unfolded and the circumstances of injuries and this and that. We don't see that. So I concluded that most probably there are more questions to be answered eventually. And so I have left it to just memory for now. And most hopefully it could be that he's alive. He's just locked up at home. It's very possible. Rather than leave some individual freedom, they could just chain your legs. If you notice, there was a time we broke the news in 2019 on BBC, Al Jazeera, and other news organizations about Islamic torture centers in northern Nigeria. I helped break out the news and we blew the whistle, and immediately the Nigerian government now decided to shut down these torture centers. You would think that these torture centers were operating in maybe obscurity or hidden, but for decades and centuries, these are private prisons that parents operated in northern Nigeria. It's all over there. Everybody knows it. If your parents think you're not practicing Islam well enough, or if you don't recite the Quran good enough, then they could condemn you to this kind of torture centers where you will be chained forever with your clerics and you have to cram the Holy Quran, you have to do all those sort of rituals about Islam, and then you can't ever leave. Most probably, if you're a child, you'll be sexually abused. If you're an adult, you would lack the basic needs of medicine, and a lot of people die in those processes. Anybody could just use Google and type Islamic torture centers in northern Nigeria. You could go and see the news column. You could go and see the images column. You'll see people in chains. You'll see a lot of examples of these prominent in northern Nigeria. And that's what happened. So I am sure if Malik Jafar is alive, he's in one of these prisons, maybe kept and forgotten. But I hope there will be a chance for us to know the truth.
I never thought I would say this, but I hope he's being kept somewhere alive, which means that he's in prison, but at least alive. Thank you for sharing your memories of Malik. And yeah, thank you for helping us guiding Malik Jafar. And moving on, I have some blasphemy cases I'd like to talk about. But before we mention those blasphemy cases, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the situation of humanism, atheism, secularism in Africa, Nigeria, neighboring countries, and give us a little view of how things work there in 2025. Has anything changed?
Oh, I've been out of circulation for half a decade. So, yes, so I can only say I'm catching up with individuals. A lot of them have, I think most people have decided it's very dangerous to really be this active online. And so they kept to themselves and just give a facade
They
that
say
they
that
are.
they made a good example out of you.
Exactly. This is what the incarceration was about, scare people as much as they can, especially with the sentencing that if I could be handed, because they considered me high profile with international connections and protection. And so if they could hand me over this kind of huge sentence, it's actually 24 years under Section 210 and then 16 years under Section 114 of the Kano state laws, which totally they have no jurisdiction to. Because if you are taken from one state, you can't be tried with the laws of another state. The laws of Kano state are Sharia laws incorporated into the civil constitution. So I was given a sentence of cumulative years by the Kano state government. And it was most definitely actually, to set an example and scare people. And if northern Nigerian atheists, non-Muslims could be scared and maybe shown an example of what they could do with me, then I think they served that purpose. Although I don't want to blow too much of the cover we have. We are very active on the ground. It's just that the public activities halted a bit because they really were not sure what would happen with them, especially since the most pillar of support is me. I was the one channeling the resources and the support system and protections and operating the safe houses. And then I got captured, and then there was no much of support beyond what international community could reach to, which is a very maybe isolated cases because we had hundreds of people. So you can't really reach out to everyone. So it's only a few people that could get help, especially the women folk who had no chance whatsoever. They don't stand a chance. If you are married to a Muslim and he knows or he suspects that you are this, the best thing is to convert and repent and just show total submission. And this is how they could keep safe, especially if it's as life-threatening as it is. And then the men who are mostly students, and then you could understand what happens. It means you have to also publicly renounce atheism. They have done that a lot. So underground, they still kept on there with their activities, but the public discourse, the public presence that they always had was diminished. And people I heard that were boasting that with the capture of Mubarak Bala, with the sentencing, we have defeated atheism in northern Nigeria or in the Sahel region. This is the boast. Actually, they were shocked that I was released, and people were very angry that I was released. So there was supposed to actually be a protest. It's just that I was advised to keep quiet. I was advised to keep a low profile because the politicians wouldn't want to be embarrassed by releasing me too early. And then I will come out and make noise, and then they will say, okay, maybe he hasn't learned a lesson. And so in reality, I was actually released in August, in May of 2000 and in 2024. The pronouncement of my freedom was in May of 2024. And then I was kept again further for another 100 days to give the government a chance to either appeal or to prepare what they could in terms of clandestine, maybe movements to ship me into another quiet, maybe seclusion. They would really rather keep me, even out of prison, they would rather keep me in a controlled environment where I'm not allowed to talk, I'm not allowed to leave the country, I'm not allowed to do anything like house arrest. And so it was quelled that if I was released, the lawyers and the people that would know will not protest, and then people will not know that I was released. And so it wasn't announced that I was released for those months until the January announcement. And the January announcement came only because the diplomats and the embassies and all those international bodies that want to close cases under the ground, they know I am released, but then they cannot update their data, they cannot put it on their website, they cannot update their governments on the developments. And most times this is end of the year, people want to close cases and files and submit reports. So there were other pressures that I should at least make a statement that whether my case is concluded or I'm under house arrest or I'm allowed to leave the country or this and that. And so I said, okay, we can release the news that I am released, but under a controlled system, a controlled environment without much freedom, because the pronouncement is that I'm not supposed to be online, I'm not supposed to be active, I cannot criticize Islam again. The sanctions were all in place, so I cannot, even this kind of program, I am not allowed to do it. But then I decided to engage as I can, but not in Nigeria. I engaged the public on the international platforms, and I tried as much as I can to avoid.
I remember I was gonna have you as a guest last year. And
Yeah.
also I worked for Secular Rescue Center for Nuclear Transnational. And
Yeah.
he was working on Mubarak's case, and I was in touch with him, and I wanted to have him last year, but we had to keep it under the table at that
Yeah,
time.
I could engage mostly if it's an international audience. The problem the government would ever have with me is if I engaged local audience and I riled up the sentiments that I was able to rile in the previous interviews and posts. So the main key point is you don't mostly speak in the language, because if I speak in English, it's only 10% of the northern Nigerian Muslims that can understand what I'm saying. These are the educated folks. These are the ones that may not really go out to kill people because of blasphemy. They would rather maybe make online noises or counter with their own jargons in English, which is okay, it's welcome, it's like engagement, it's debate. But this is the healthy debate. But then I cannot speak in the local language, the Hausa language. If I were ever to engage Islam and discuss Sharia or jihad or killings or this and that in the local language, then I'm engaging the 80% or 90% of the populace, which is about 100 million people. Northern Nigerian Muslims are about 100 million, of which about 20, 30 million are the ones that you could call the educated ones, mildly educated ones. So
I'm sorry, when you were in detention, how was the news of your sentence reduction was delivered to you? Was it by your lawyer, family, correctional officer, mail?
Well, it's mostly the lawyers. Actually, the lawyers came with the update that my sentence has been reduced to 5 years, but they have to make calculations whether I have served the 5 years. By then, I was already in my fourth year, which means I'm in my seventh year. If you serve, because it's 2/3 of your sentence.
It's always, there's always a ratio. You never serve all 100%.
Yeah, if you served 4.5 years as I served, it means I've already served 7 years. So I've served beyond the 5 years. So the 5 years would just most probably 4 months. That's it.
And having a flashback to your extraction from the country, what can you share about that?
Okay. I really never wanted to leave the country because I felt it means they have won. If I didn't die, if I resisted the authorities, I resisted the fatwas, I resisted the terrorists that were pronouncing my killing, I thought most probably I could resist whatever persecution that could come through with me because we know it's not really a legal case. Because if it was legal, they would have charged me in where they arrested me. If they took me in Kaduna State, this is where they should have charged me. And for fairness, for a fair trial, for safety reasons, they would have also taken me to a more safer and more secular city like Abuja, the capital city, or the southern parts of the country where you wouldn't be killed for blasphemy. But they chose to take me into the hinterland, into Kano State, my own home state. It's like taking me into Kandahar or Somalia for trial of blasphemy. They knew what they were doing. They knew they were risking my life, but they decided to do it. And then the lawyer came that I have a reduced sentence, and then what it means is that I'll soon get the freedom, and then they will make sure that they extract me out of Nigeria as soon as possible. I was supposed to leave the country maybe within a week or two. And I resisted that. I resisted that for 9 months because I had a lot of things to cover back in Nigeria, especially regarding my own family and then also my parents. I needed to make sure that I kept a contact because I don't know if I was extracted out of Nigeria, if I would ever be able to return home. So that nostalgic feeling kept me at home. And I wanted to extend my stay as much as I can. And so I kept postponing the paperwork, trying to give myself more time. I tried as much, although it's not announced, which made me really safe. But then I tried as much as I can to maintain my presence in Nigeria. And also, I wanted to give the people the idea that you can't really chase me out. I am leaving only because now I have a chance of study, a scholarship, and then I'm only going to return because the blasphemy or apostasy sentence is either you are killed or you're crucified or you are amputated on opposite limbs, like left arm and right leg, or the other way around. And also, the last thing is you are exiled. So you or waging war on God or waging war on religion. These are the punishments that Islam would rather give you. But if they can't, then they can exile you. This is the best, the worst they could do, exile you. So I felt if they could exile me, it means they have won. That's why I tried to maintain the status quo that I'm still a Nigerian. I still want to go back. I belong to the community. And as much as I can now, I'm still engaging, even here in Germany, I'm engaging the Muslim community from Nigeria here in Germany, and then also from around the region. So I've been attending mosques, I've been attending Muslim gatherings, Eid gatherings, festivities, Nigerian gatherings, trying to make a presence so that they will know. And I've tried as much as I can also to keep in touch with people back home, especially in northern Nigeria, just trying to bring back that confidence that they can't tolerate us. We have to make a stand. And I think we have already etched out a space for ourselves in northern Nigeria. Now, you cannot count northern Nigerian philosophical thinking without counting the atheists. We have already made a presence. So I don't want to lose that status that we carved out for ourselves. My philosophy is that is the society that has to adjust to have us present in those kind of conservative societies rather than just the monolith kind of society they want to create, which is just puritanical Islamic doctrine.
So I'm taking notes. All right. Next is I believe, I have some questions, but I'm gonna save them for later. Now I would like to highlight the most recent blasphemy issues of 2025. I picked some, and if you have any others, please join me.
I have four.
Oh, okay, good. I have five, so we can just mention all of them. So the first one is in January 2025. A shocking report emerged revealing an organized criminal network operating what investigators called the blasphemy business. Yeah, you heard it right. This coordinated group, working in collusion with officials from Pakistan's Federal Investigation Agency, systematically entrapped young Pakistanis on social media using fake profiles, often women with false identity, victims into sharing or responding to a blasphemous content. Once entrapped, the victims and their families were extorted for money in exchange for dropping charges.
Wow.
Police report revealed this network was behind an estimated 90% of blasphemy cases in the country since 2021. 90%. With more than 450 people trapped by these fake accusations. The shocking scale came to light when the National Commission for Human Rights and Punjab Police documented a dramatic spike in cases from just 11 in 2020 to 767 by mid-2024. So 4 people died in custody under suspicious circumstances, evidence of torture. And in July 2025, the Islamabad High Court ordered the federal government to establish an investigation commission. However, just days later, after appeals from leaders of the blasphemy business, the court suspended its own order. A stark of demonstrations of how powerful religious extremist networks have become in Pakistan. They are able to manipulate even the highest levels of justice. And yeah, we know that from personal experience, you and I. What do you think about this case? The blasphemy business.
I think I could now remember that when I was in police custody, they were actually checking my phone and checking my account balance. And what they were complaining about is that you don't even have money. Then I told them, what is it about money? They said, you don't have money, so you can't even bail yourself. And I felt, okay, it's about money. It means maybe it's not really about religion. If I could give you money, maybe I could get my freedom. And over the months while I was incarcerated, most of the keepers would ask me, if you have money, you can get out of this. But I was in jail. I didn't know. I didn't know there could be money, maybe through the legal and fundraisers that we had. If I knew, I could have said, okay, maybe you give me some of it and I'll keep, because then most probably it will speed up the process. So I always knew money is also involved. It's part of the booty that they would take and then maybe ease up your situation.
Yeah. I was incarcerated. I was the only literate and high educated person in the unit. So I was handling all the communication, petitions, and documents sending to court by the other inmates. I personally witnessed over a dozen cases where the people were just accusing, ladies were accusing men of harassment and other stuff. And after they get arrested, they send a lawyer, and the lawyer negotiates a number. And then once agreed, next day, the complainant takes their complaint back, and the guy gets released. I met 14 people. I have names, dates, cases. It's
Wow.
a fact. It's a fact. It was a business. But for criminal charges, not political charges, but hey, political charges even worse. All it takes is a phone call from your superior.
Complainants.
Yeah, so political charges are even easier. Next one. 4 men sentenced to death in Rawalpindi. In January 2025, a Rawalpindi court sentenced 4 men, Rana Usman, Ashfaq Ali, Salman Sajjad, and Wajid Ali, to death for allegedly sharing blasphemous content via WhatsApp and social media. These cases exemplify the dangers of Pakistani's cybercrime laws combined with blasphemy statute, where private digital communications become grounds for capital punishment. The men join an estimated 750 people in prison on blasphemy charges as of this year. That's representing like the highest number in recent history.
Wow.
And the next one is about a YouTuber, charged over a few brand name. Again, this one is also from the same country. Okay, I didn't know I picked that many Pakistani cases. So this one is a Pakistani YouTuber, Rajab Bhatt, was charged with blasphemy in January 2025 for naming his perfume brand 295, a reference to section 295 of Pakistan's Penal Code, which contains the blasphemy provisions. Seemingly absurd case demonstrates how broadly blasphemy laws can be interpreted, and the leader of Tahrik Pakistan, an extremist political party, personally filed charges against them. And as of June 2025, it was granted interim bail, but ordered to cooperate with the investigation. His fate is still uncertain for the crime of the perfume name 295. And the next one I have is the Iranian Singh, who was sentenced to death. In January 2025, Iran's Supreme Court sentenced popular singer Amir Hossein, known as Tatalo, to death for insulting the Prophet Muhammad. The 37-year-old musician, known for combining rap, pop, and R&B, had been living in Istanbul since 2008 before the Turkish police extradited him to Iran in December 2020. The court originally sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment, but prosecutors appealed, demanding death, and the Supreme Court agreed. This case is particularly tragic because he had once been quoted by Iran's conservative government as a way to reach. So even meeting with ultra-conservative President Ibrahim Raisi in 2017 and releasing a song supporting Iran's nuclear program in 2015, nothing saved him. His fall from favor to death now illustrates how quickly perceived allies can become victims when they step out of line. Iran executed over 900 people in 2020, the highest in 9 years, with blasphemy increasingly used as grounds for execution. I am also the director of the Atheist Refugee Assistance Program in Turkey, and we have many cases running from, and I personally knew this case as well. Now, let's go to my last case. So in 2025, the Human Rights Watch released a devastating report titled Conspiracy to Grab the Land, documenting on how Pakistan's blasphemy laws are systematically exploited for economic gain and legal evictions. The report showed the accusers use blasphemy charges to incite mob violence that forces entire communities, particularly Christians, flee their homes, leaving the property vulnerable to seizure. Business rivals use these accusations as weapons against competitors, and land developers use them to displace religious minorities from real estate. So the report documented cases like the 2013 attack on Joseph Colony, where a mob of 3,000 burned more than 100 Christian homes. So it was only following a blasphemy allegation. Yeah, Joseph Colony, I believe was the name. The police admitted they avoided confronting the mob out of fear. Like local residents and activists maintained the real objective, which was to seize land for the steel industry. The accused man, Sawan Masih, was sentenced to death and only had his conviction overturned in 2020. 7 years later. What's yours? Let's hear your blasphemy cases.
This is grim, grim, grim. All grim news. Sad. I noticed both mine and your list is only emanating from the resultant Islamic. You don't hear blasphemy against Buddhism. You don't hear blasphemy cases against Jesus Christ or against maybe what do you call the Tibetan monks.
I did have a case, a very interesting case I worked on. I cannot disclose the details. He was beaten, harassed and beaten by a group of monks, and the guy shelters to a police station. Police says, okay, go to that room. They walk into the room. They bring the same monks again, 13 of them. They release him into the room. So they continue beating him in the station.
This is in Myanmar, right?
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I have known of monks' violence in Myanmar, Burma, I've never heard of Sri Lankan monks being violent, but I know they could be weird sometimes, especially the Thailand monks also. But then also there is also the Hindu mob justice. They could also be very fanatical in India. And I think without these are maybe the right wing, who could say maybe the far Ku Klux Klan or the likes, maybe in America could also do these kind of mob justices. But it's not really, I don't know, still it's offensive that even if it's not tagged blasphemy, that people would take offense just because you ridiculed or you countered a doctrine or a deity, and you end up either losing your life or losing your livelihood or being threatened or maybe being beaten. And most times in these kind of situations, you'd see that the state, the instrument of state, is being used by these kind of mainstreamers against the minority offender, because most times the offender has to come from a minority without much protection, especially maybe political protection or tribal protection, if you consider Africa, where tribes matter, and then also maybe the mob protection, where also you have your own mad people behind you. For example, if you are maybe, for example, you are a blasphemer against maybe a Hindu god, but then also you have the Islamists behind you, being a Muslim, then maybe there could be some sort of control over how to handle the situation, because it's always the prey that suffers, not someone with the canine, not someone with the talons, not someone that can fight back. Dogs can't eat dogs. I think most times it's always the victim has to come from a minority tribe, a minority religion, or an isolated community that has no political protection or government recognition, which is why we have to be present for these kind of cases. Sometimes I don't really bother myself. Part of the cases that I'll mention now is not mostly victims that are Muslim. What I mean is the victims are not necessarily non-Muslims. Sometimes the victims in my situations are mostly also Muslims from minority sects within Islamic religion. So the first case is Amin Sharif. He was arrested around the time I was arrested. He was only a kid, and now he's served 5 years. Immediately I got out of jail. I sought to know his situation because he's serving a death sentence. And so within that period that I was in freedom, I reached out and I took notes of what he needed most was the inhaler drugs, because he became asthmatic in jail, as well as other vital medications, because I know the situation. I've been in that kind of situation. So I immediately asked a few humanists around in the city that he was being kept. And I told them that please go and reach out to this individual, but don't go as atheists because he's a Muslim. We don't want to influence his leanings, whatever, in whatever way. You just go as human rights defenders. So they went as human rights defenders, they reached out to him and they gave him some provisions, and they took note of the medications that he needed. And then they came back the second time with these medications. And I also visited Amnesty International office, and I brought his case forward that this is an individual that is losing his life, most probably, even if he got out, because he's very ill. And they took note of that, and they checked their record that they have also sent a package for him, but that they will double their effort. But immediately after a few months also, I decided to go into that city. Even though I'm in hiding in northern Nigeria, I snuck myself around and I found myself in that city. I wanted to visit him in person to know his situation. But then immediately the contact was made with the prison officials and they knew it was me. They didn't allow access. So I waited 3 days in that city and I couldn't see the individual. So what I only could do is muster a few more resources and channel towards him, and I had to leave. So it always happens that the victims, as I mentioned, are not necessarily victims that are from opposing religions or minority groups. They could also be within the house of Islam, but then they are persecuted. So this is Hani Sharif. He's still serving the death sentence. He's still awaiting his trial after 5 years. The trial will have to go back and start it all over again, and he's wasting away in jail. And he was just a young kid. Now he has already added 5 years and his health is deteriorating. Then secondly is another Muslim, also from another minority sect, although it's a prominent sect. He is a cleric, actually. His name is Sheikh Abdul Jabbar. He also come from my home state of Kano. He was also arrested in 2021, but he's still in jail. They just transferred him to the capital, Abuja. In fact, I just gave a number where he could be reached, because he was really also he has his mental situation deteriorating as I received the news. And so because I had contacts from the maybe Abuja facility handlers, and he's in that facility, I decided to lend a helping hand. So I gave the contacts and I gave the directives on how they could handle the situation, and then he could have his own, maybe a sort of private arrangement for a proper accommodation. You could make those private arrangements. He's a very big cleric, but they have already sentenced him to death, and he's also his mental health, I think also even his financial situation is appalling from what I learned. He's still there serving that sentence. He's in his 4th year now. So that's Sheikh Abdul Jabbar. So these are the two. One is a Sufi cleric, the Sufi kid, the kid in the prison. He's a Sufi kid, while the Sheikh Abdul Jabbar is a Shiite, actually. But Shiites always end up killed. This is the 10th anniversary of the Shiite killings in northern Nigeria. They were just celebrating it yesterday, that about between 300 and 1,000 believing Shiites were killed by the Nigerian state just for blocking the road and for challenging the government. There was no justice about it. There was no reparation. There was no inquiry. Just that they just end up being killed, and then they were buried. In fact, there was evidence by satellite imagery of the mass grave where their members were buried. And then also, this is the government killing about 1,000 people, but then also individuals in northern Nigeria, the mob justice thing that they're always capable of doing, also rose because the government was busy killing Shiites. So they decided now it's time to kill Shiites. And then they located the Shiites living amongst them and they started killing them. I have pictures, but they are very gory. I can't share it. So they killed them and they put the pictures online, and they were hailing themselves that we have killed Shiites. And in the background, you'll see dead bodies that they have massacred. And these are individuals with faces. But in northern Nigeria, you could kill and show your face, but nothing will happen to you. So these are the two that I could mention. Then the other two are already dead. These first two are the ones in jail, still currently in jail. And we are hoping that their situation will be monitored and maybe they could get some succor. So the two individuals that died this year, people that I have not known, one is a Christian, one is a Muslim. The first one died because he was a meat seller in a local market in Sokoto State, which is in northern Nigeria, and someone came begging for alms, and then he said, "In the name of the Prophet, give me some food," something like that in the local language. Then this man, being a puritanical Wahhabi student, decided to school this beggar that you don't ask for things in the name of Muhammad. You ask it in the name of Allah, because Muhammad is not at the same level with Allah. If you do that, you are equating him with God, such as Jesus worship, and then you are not a good Muslim, or you are not a Muslim. But because he said Allah is above, the Prophet is below Allah, that was instigating enough for his own core marketers. He is a meat seller in a prominent market in Sokoto State, but then his own core meat sellers rose against him that he blasphemed the Prophet. He has lowered the level of the Prophet Muhammad. And so they riled it up, and then they said he has blasphemed. This is a friend that maybe for 10 years they were doing business with. But then the mob came also, because whenever you mention this case, his name is Musa Meat. So the mob came for him and he ended up dead. The police tried to salvage the situation. They kept pushing people. They kept trying to save him, but they were overwhelmed. And then the man was killed live on Facebook, because the videos are all over the social media. So he ended up killed. And then also, again, another instance is a woman in Niger State, northern Nigeria, in August of this year, 30th of August. This is a Muslim woman also. Her name is Amosun. I think let me check her name to confirm. Her name is Amai. Her name is Amai, Miss Amai. This woman is just a street in northern Nigeria. Abuja is very close to Niger State, where she was killed. So a customer asked her to marry him, and so they could commit the Sunnah. Then she said, over what should she commit Sunnah with him? She doesn't like him. So it was a marriage proposal, and it's typical in northern Nigeria that sex is called sunnah, what the Prophet loved. But if you said it and you are not in the mainstream Muslim divide, then it could be reinterpreted as an insult to the Prophet. So I think most times, most people in the mainstream Muslim communities, there is no problem mentioning that the Prophet loved sex or he encouraged people to have sex through either marriage or through what your right hand possesses. He's always emphasized that. And so we have as a culture we have already known that sex is equivalent of sunnah. You could say I committed sunnah with my wife, meaning I had sex with my wife. It's just that, but sunnah is practice of the Prophet. It's supposed to be a harmless description honoring the Prophet, but then anyone could also now tweak that meaning as denigrating against the Prophet. It just depends on who said it. If you are not a Muslim or if you are not considered Muslim enough and you said it, then it's an insult. But if you are a Muslim and you said it, then it's a prophetic honor. So this lady said she will not commit the sunnah with him. And so it was determined to be a blasphemous statement. And also the image of the video of her killing and the image right there on Facebook and online, live on video, she was killed August the 30th. And nobody was arrested, no justice was served. She was killed. Okay, before she was killed, I remember the details now. The police intervened and took her to, instead of their police station, because they knew they could be overwhelmed, they took her to the palace, the local palace, where a king or a sort of an emir or a king could arbitrate what had happened. So the emir could have saved her life by maybe just keeping the tone low, that most probably you said something that you're not supposed to say in public, and then everybody could go. He has that power. But then this man, maybe wanting to be a populist, decided to hand her back to the police that she has said something beyond his comprehension, beyond how they behave. So immediately he said it's beyond him that she's most definitely she is from a minority tribe, a small tribe. So they could do that just because they hate those kind of tribes. Police took her back and decided they will take her to court. And immediately the mention of court came, people have now already concluded that this woman has blasphemed and that the emir or the king has determined her sin is so grave that she needs to go to the court, meaning she's guilty. And so they killed her right in the streets, right beside her wares where she's selling food. So those are the two that died in 2025. But then also there are two that I want to mention honorably. One is called Rhoda Jatau, Miss Rhoda Jatau. She was released by the Bauchi State Governor after so much pressure. She was kept for 2 years because she opposed the killing in the street of a blasphemer called Miss Deborah. This is a young student that was killed by her own classmates in Sokoto State in 2022. And so while the condemnations were pouring out from the Christian community, from the Muslim community about how the student got killed, and then people were rioting in the city until there was a curfew. I was in jail, so I didn't know much of this until I got out. But then I realized that part of those people that were posting against the killing, there were people that were taken into custody by the state government. So this woman lasted the 2 years in that jail on charges of blasphemy for criticizing why the lady was killed. And so the governor kept her from that 2022 until he won re-election and until we had to rile against the unjust incarceration and channel the matter back to the church because she has a body of protection, which is the church. It's not like an atheist where you don't have protection. So the church has to come in and pressure the governor. And especially since he has won his re-election, then he felt there is no need to continue the case. And so she was given a bail. And then what it means is that she has for her own safety. So her name is Rhoda Jato, and she is released from jail after serving either 2 or 3 years in jail. Then the other two I want to mention are not Nigerians. These are people. One is an Egyptian atheist that was taken just a month ago. His whereabouts are still unknown. I don't know much about him. I tried to share as much as I can information about him. It's still out there. And people are still trying to determine whether he is in jail because most probably if you are vanishing in Egypt as an atheist, or a blogger, then definitely it's the authorities that have taken you. Otherwise, you are already dead. I think his name is Al Jafari. I can't really recall the name. But then this is an Egyptian atheist that was just taken a month or 2 months ago, and he has vanished. There are his pictures, or maybe while you're uploading, could we give you the picture where you could add his face to the list. Then the last one is Betty. I think she's very prominent. Betty in Morocco serving 30-month sentence for wearing a T-shirt where the shirt says Allah is a lesbian in London, and then this picture was taken in London, but
Which
then
may be
now,
true,
yeah, exactly, it could be, but then now
unless
she
somebody
went.
proves it wrong.
Exactly. Actually, I always say when they call God a he, I said, how do you know? You don't really know until you have an examination of the genitals. How would you know that your God is a he? Whether it's a she or he, you can't really know. Or maybe the gender is fluid. Who knows? Yeah. So crazy enough, this lady wore her shirt in London, but then they waited for her until she came home to Morocco. And then they took her and they presented the picture that she wore this. They don't care where the jurisdiction was. And then, even as she was awaiting surgery, as I learned, she was taken to jail and she was sentenced to, I think, 30 months in jail. She has already served almost 8 now, about 8 months or 6. So she has maybe 2 more years to go, which means she wouldn't be released until early 2028, which is very sad. And I think the diplomats could help, maybe because Morocco is supposed to be as secular as any Maghreb country could be, in my opinion. They don't have the fanaticism
Yeah,
that we see in Asia and in northern Nigeria.
the definition of secularism in that parts of the world is funny.
Yeah,
Turkey on paper is a secular state.
yeah,
Conflicted,
indeed,
pro-Islamic secular state, whatever that means.
indeed. So
Yeah,
her name is Betty. She's the last I would mention honorably. And this concludes about 7 now. There are more, I'm sure, but the 7 are the ones I can recall by head. But there are more, definitely. People on the comment section could now maybe bring more cases that we could follow through and read about.
yes, please, and share this video. Subscribe to Center for Inquiry Canada YouTube channel, and also drop your comments in the chat. Okay, I just mentioned Turkey, and then I just realized I didn't mention any blasphemy cases about Turkey. So I'm just gonna mention one, which is a friend. She's a lawyer. Her name is Feyza Alt. And so let me get some details about that. What happened? Here it is. She's a 37-year-old. She will be mad for having her age, but she's a 37-year-old Istanbul lawyer, a feminist activist, and a social media figure. And on February 18, she posted a Persian poem. That was in 2024. But she posted a Persian poem, formerly known as Twitter, on X. And when a user commented, Feyza seems to have Sharia attack, playing on panic attack. And she responded, fuck Sharia. So she was detained, and then she was sentenced to 9 months imprisonment, which was deferred, meaning she won't serve time unless she commit another crime in 5 years. But she's a lawyer, and she's standing behind her words. And Turkey is a secular country, and there is no Sharia law in Turkey. And
Even though Rajiv would rather have the Sharia back.
yes, but the court sentenced her anyway. So Article 216 of the Turkish Penal Code is de facto, which is being used systematically by the Turkish administration. So yeah, moving, let me see. So the next is okay. So I would like to mention a few programs which I'm affiliated with, which you have personal experience with, because the name of the event is Protecting Blasphemers, and we need to offer them resources, how they can seek help. Now I will introduce the Atheist Refugee Assistance Program in Turkey. I will also introduce the Assistance for Apostates program by CFI Canada in Canada, and the Secular Rescue Program in USA, and some other programs. And I'm sure you also may have some additional organizations or programs to recommend people. As for the atheist refugee assistance program, Turkey shelters the greatest number of refugees on the planet, and a significant number of them are political refugees who fled their homelands just because they renounced Islam. The recent efforts by the Atheist Support Network of Atheist Alliance International or the Secular Rescue Program of Center for Inquiry inspired the Turkish organization, the Association of Atheists, to take a more active role in assisting the non-believing asylum seekers currently stuck in Turkey, and started a program called ARAP, short for Atheist Refugee Assistance Program. Now, ARAP provides critical support in 5 key areas: accommodation, both short-term accommodation and long-term accommodation, employment assistance, legal help, reference letters, support letters, documentation, and guidance through asylum process. That can be financial guidance, educational scholarship guidance, mental health guidance. These refugees often face discrimination even at immigration offices, making advocacy organizations essential. ARAP is sponsored by Atheism Derneği International, Center for Inquiry Transnational, Atheist Alliance International, and David Silverman Charitable Fund. We have plans to extend ARAP into an even bigger life-saving machine, life-saving network, as the need for these services continue to grow. And as of 2025, we have launched a safe house in Turkey, an Arab safe house with a 10-bed capacity. Now it's only open to women and family, but we also have 10-bed safe house in Turkey for atheist, humanist, secular refugees. Please go to atheistrefugeesturkey.com or atheistrefugeesturkey.com and get more information. You can also apply from those websites, but number one prerequisite is you physically need to, so it's only for the refugees currently in Turkey. And then I will talk about the Assistance for Apostate program of CFI Canada. Center for Inquiry Canada's program currently is working on another prospect case, and we are hoping to bring them to Canada in 2026. Now, also keep in mind that Canada has terminated its G5 group of 5 or some other private sponsorship refugee programs. In the lack of those, our program only works with UNHCR approved cases. So if you are a UNHCR approved case who has been granted relocation to Canada, then you may also apply for assistance for apostates, the CFI Canada website. Now, I am the director of the both programs I mentioned. The third one, I work there as a manager, the Center for Inquiry Transnations, CFI USA, Secular Rescue Program, where I have the privilege and honor to work with Matthew Krawata. And Secular Rescue Program protects journalists, writers, authors, bloggers, but secular activists whose lives are endangered because of their non-religious views. And that program is open to anywhere in the world, from Palestine to Saudi Arabia, to Africa, to Sri Lanka. You can apply from the world. It is not limited to Turkey like Arab. It is not limited to Canada like Assistance for Apostates. Secular Rescue is a more global rescue program. The name rescue is a little bit too aggressive because people expect us to have our helicopters and choppers and we go into missions to rescue them from their country and stuff like that. No, we don't have our SEAL team yet. Unfortunately, the rescue bit is only limited to assisting your humanitarian visa application, assisting your advocacy, but we do not engage in border crossings and that type of stuff. The name sometimes may imply that, but yeah, that's what secular rescue is. And secular rescue, Arab, both have below 20% case approval rate. I believe secular rescue is around 15% and Arab is around 17%. These are our case acceptance rates because we do have to do vetting on each case. We do have to do a true investigation on each case. You wouldn't believe the number of fraudulent, fake, doctored applications we receive. It hurts me to say it, but it's about 80%. That's why our case approval numbers are very low. Not because our threshold is very high, we just do true investigation from secondary sources in the country, whichever country it is. We have some networks, resources from other departments, government agencies. We verify and we interview your
claims.
Not only claims, but also references that people show as reference who can vouch for. That's about secular rescue program. And another one we have is the United States non-belief relief from Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF, which provides humanitarian assistance for individuals targeted for non-belief or secular activism. So yeah, the prerequisites for most of these programs are that you need to have some body of work where you can show your secular rights activism. If you don't have that at least 1 year's worth of body of work which you can document, then there is little we can do if the program's prerequisites orders us, mandates us to work only with activists. I just wanted to add that. Another one is by Humanist Mutual Aid Network, which provides secular support to at-risk populations internationally through education, health assistance, and small business grants. Another one is International Cities of Refugee Network, ICORN, which offers long-term shelter to writers and artists at risk as a consequence of their creative activity. And of course, there is the atheist refugee in Germany, where you currently reside. Is there any other programs you'd like to highlight or organizations?
These are the ones that I've worked with over the years before my incarceration, because even though we have the networks, we have about 4 secular humanist organizations. I think I lost connection.
I'm sorry
Am I
for
there?
interrupting, but I forgot to mention one of them, Humanist International. They also have a Humanists at Risk program. However, Humanists International changed their scope this year. Humanists at Risk program now only to directors and volunteers of member organizations to Humanist International. There are over 100 member organizations to Humanist International. And if you are a director, a volunteer, a staff, somebody in the administrative circles of those organizations, then you may be eligible for Humanists at Risk program of Humanist International as well. I'm sorry, Mubarak, please.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Most of the organizations you mentioned are the ones. Okay, am I back?
Yeah, let's just repeat again.
Okay, I said I have a 5-year disconnect with the humanist programs and the rest of the years that I was absent. But what I know is that most of those ones you mentioned are the ones that I've also worked with. Firstly, over my case when I was taken to the psychiatric hospital, and then later when I became the national president, Humanist Association of Nigeria. So most of the international organizations I worked with regarding our own cases are these ones. But also I think the bulk of our work in Nigeria was mostly domestic. It's very rare cases that we rescued people and got them out of the country. What we try to do, because Nigeria's situation is very unique, you have the most extreme cases in northern Nigeria, but then we also have the safer southern Nigerian region where we have allies, we can operate safe networks, safe houses, and also rescues where we can house people or individuals or relocate them temporarily within the country, because most times the threats are not from institutions. They're not from government. They are mostly from family, friends, and the mob, or maybe terrorists. So if we could just permutate your location in a way for a few months into a year, that's how we could keep you safe. Then in anonymity, we release you back where you can also maybe change location and then start over somewhere else. So we've managed to relocate individuals down to the south, or maybe sometimes to the center of the country where it's safer, where we operate safe houses. Most times we have our safe houses, but we don't dedicate them exclusively as safe houses for obvious reasons, because people would know addresses and they could target these locations. So what we do is just individuals would volunteer maybe a small chalet under their compound or in their houses, and sometimes it's just a spare room or maybe two, and we manage with that. And if we have a pressing case, we just recommend, and then the family takes them in and give them the support they need, and that's how we manage most of the situations. And regrettably, the few cases that we sent abroad that we were able to rescue and process into other countries, safer countries, actually ended up either too forlorn. By forlorn, I mean the individuals felt depressed, so far disconnected with their home community or culture or family, that they would rather opt to come back home rather than keep up with the isolation, where most times if the situation stretches too far. Few cases that the asylum was rejected, even although I was in jail. I don't know the details of what happened, but then these are individuals that couldn't make the asylum, so they were brought back, went on to suffer the consequences, especially if you offended the culture and you left, and now the country you considered to be a safe haven sent you back and typically handed you back to your tormentors. What happens? Now you are meat on their plate, so they could handle you however they want to. So I'm still catching up with these networks and seeing what strategies to employ next. I've already worked even as I got the freedom, I worked with the few, especially human and the secular rescue. I think I contacted you about some Turkish LGBT individuals last year, trying to see them rescued, and so thankfully they are now in Canada. Now the ones in Nigeria, we've managed to stabilize their situation. Mostly, as I said, is not about taking them out of the country, but relocating them to a safer location. And also, most of the programs we engage with, tuition support, that's small scholarships where individuals get small fund releases so that they can continue their studies. I underestimated the effort I was doing when I was the president of the Humanist Association. But then when I got out, I realized that almost all the students that we were supporting actually had the system of support collapse after my abduction. And so most of them ended up dropping out. So the first task I took to myself, even on my personal capacity, even not as the president of Humanist Association of Nigeria, was to rally back the friends and the networks so that we could support them back. And we managed to support, I think, a dozen or more individuals back to school, sometimes not in the original schools, because there were cases that they were outed in their schools as atheists, or maybe their online activity was traced back by other students, and so they are not really safe to go back to these locations. So they had to seek an admission in another location of the country and start over. So for us, the network with these present cases have always been there. And most times we don't have the resources to record these. I don't know what records they have now that the association is there, but I have managed to keep up with the community in my own capacity. Even here, most of my stipend goes back to these humanist communities. And I think I have done a lot so far, a lot. And I even extended my support system beyond the humanist community. We try as much as we can, these minorities that I mentioned, especially the Sufi community, the Shiite community, Christians in northern Nigeria. These are individuals that we have supported so far. And even in my personal capacity, this is what I've been doing so far. And next year, 2026, I hope to formalize these works. I'm put in the paperwork now to have a standard system, a standard organization registered either in Nigeria, if the system would allow us to have the register, or here in Germany, and then we could continue the work through networking with other organizations so that we could have more effective ways of channeling help to those that deserve it. You are muted. You are muted, so I think I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, so yeah, you mentioned, I hope you establish that organization next year. And speaking of organizations, I realized that I forgot to mention one program in particular, which is the ASN program, Atheist Support Network of Atheist Alliance International, which I served as president in 2016-17, and now I'm serving as a board member. Keep that program in mind as well if you are in need. AI's program is also a global program which includes all regions and countries, though the help is limited. And I remembered another fallen atheist activist and a blasphemy case from this year. The case is not from this year, from 2022, 23, I don't remember, an old case, but execution, the killing, was in 2025, January 29th, at 11 p.m. local time, before his court decision the next day, verdict. And the name is Salvan Momika. He was also one of my cases. And he was killed in his apartment near Stockholm, Sweden, in Hosje district. He was shot multiple times in the head during a TikTok live. He was 38 years old. And the killing occurred just hours before a scheduled court verdict on Thursday, January 30, where he was going to receive a ruling on the charges of agitation against an ethnic or national group for his Quran burning demonstration. Yeah, was another fallen atheist this year. Now, since last year, we've seen dramatic changes in the global landscape for religious freedom and blasphemy. Syria has fallen into Islamic forces, joining Afghanistan under Taliban. We are seeing similar concerning patterns in Bangladesh. What are your reflections on African region and their effects on the blasphemy situation globally?
Okay, I think what I observed over the few months that I am now in freedom is that there are two approaches to blasphemy. My internet is shaky. Am I audible?
I can hear you.
Okay. We have enforcement of blasphemy cases by governments in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, but then we also have blasphemy cases by the mob. That's by individuals, whether it's a mosque, clerics, or individuals taking the law into their own hands. So regarding the high-handedness of government, I think that's where the advocacy works. That's where you have the paperwork being pushed. You have diplomats speaking against these things or condemnations, and then politicians will come with statements, and then sometimes you get a little maybe insight or information and updates regarding the individual, even though most times it's superficial, that it doesn't go beyond the word of mouth. They don't really act upon all their pledges. But then this is the government, so at least you could document something. You have a tangible evidence, even if it's an evidence you want to use in another situation or a superior court or in a secular system, then you have something. And then you have the second one, which is mob justice, which is swift. Most times you could say that you are also lucky if you ended up with the government. So sometimes you are considered lucky if you served 5, 10 years in government custody. At least you're not being killed, you're only being abused and kept incarcerated in a terrible condition. But then if you ended up with the first one is a mob, they don't take custody, they don't keep hostages. What they do is just mob justice. The moment they could reach out to you, what they would do is just kill. The moment their aim is to kill if they can. So in these situations, I think we can say that it's a very dire situation in our country. Not just the blasphemy cases, but also other times you could see that it's entrapment, such as what you mentioned in Pakistan, where people's chats are monitored and then they could be entrapped, and then these would be used as blackmail against them. Not just religious blackmail, but also the LGBT suffer the same. Okay, the LGBT, for example, could use rescue by our organizations, even if they are religious. What I observed is that in situations that in Nigeria we have the law against the LGBT, which is 14 years in jail for either engaging in LGBT activities or supporting or protecting the LGBT. So you end up with individuals not even killed by a mold. They are being played and then taken as if they have a friendly invitation to an individual or family. And then the next morning, their dead body would be laid out in the open. And these are very prominent people that could be traced online. So sometimes they are not LGBT, they are just cross dressers, they dress as a opposite of the sex, and sometimes they are just fun seekers, but the government would not protect them, and they cannot report these kind of threats to the government because it has made it an illegal case. And then other times, it's, I think, what I could say the failure of the system, because even as humanist organizations, we are registered only to protect our own communities. The LGBT is illegal in Nigeria, so you cannot acknowledge that you are helping a minority LGBT people. Hard to say that I have never admitted that I'm helping, even though we do help them. Even currently in one of our safe houses, we have the LGBT under our protection. But you cannot say it legally in Nigeria because it means you end up or disobeying the law. You cannot acknowledge what you're doing. So most, for example, times these are just individuals, because if you dress in the opposite sex and you're a male, then you're part of the LGBT. That's what they would consider. You're just a cross dresser. Sometimes you are an individual with maybe two sex organs, or you have the woman's boobies while you're technically a man with beard. It happens. This is biology, but then it's not recognized, and these people suffer the same kind of persecutions that we suffer. So what I observed is that we have a long way to go in Africa regarding education. I have always said it. You can't pressure governments with advocacy, with whatever protections of human rights, without educating the people in the grassroots, because this is where the law emanates from. The law emanates from what people think is against their interests. Let's say it's blasphemy. I am confronting jihadism and Sharia. Other times I am maybe advocating for people's rights to dress however they want. If they want to plait their hair, they could do that. But then the police, the Sharia police, or even normal secular police people will come and arrest them for these kind of things. So I don't know how much it has deteriorated because I'm just catching up with these kind of developments. We're still trying to understand and navigate what is happening and how to go about these things. But I have known that the government has, I think, fanaticized itself beyond what it used to be a decade ago. A decade ago, they would declare that Mubarak has rights. Mubarak can be an atheist if he wanted to be, and he has the right to leave the religion. This was a decade ago, the stand of the government. But now is the government that will take you and keep you incarcerated and tell you that you don't have right to confront people online. If they are telling you should be killed, then it's your fault that you left the religion. This is what the government would tell me, that it's my fault I left the religion. It's my fault that I am a blasphemer. Most times the blasphemy could just be maybe countering jihadism online. Sometimes it could be me saying, I'm not supposed to be killed for leaving Islam, or your God is rubbish, or your religion is fanatical or too redundant for modern society. These are people, these are what people take offense from. And then you know what happens in the end. Either you end up dead or you're lucky to serve a decade or half of it in jail. So I think we have gone so low. The government has mainstreamed fanaticism, and you could see it. What I was charged with is incitement and insulting religion. But then now the clerics are there freely in the local language, freely always on sermons, inciting against other tribes, sometimes inciting against other minority sects within Islam, sometimes inciting against. They have now confidently decided that they have defeated atheists because they have sentenced me, so you hardly hear them about religious atheists, but they are considering now religious minorities. These are the people they want to also chase out of the system. That's why you have more prominent killings of Christians in northern Nigeria. You have the prominence of the LGBT killings. You have more prominence about the killings of these kind of minority sects, actually. So it's all about what they can target. They hope, because now I know that in 2026, where we mainstream our own activities, we come back online, we come back strong, we try to engage. I know they will be taken aback because they have concluded maybe they have defeated whatever they have regarding the secularism or the atheists in Nigeria. But now their target is Christians. Their target is minority sects like the Shiites, like the Sufis, like the small tribes that even if Muslim, but they don't really belong in the main body. And so they're the targets. So I think the decade or half a decade that I've been absent, things have deteriorated so bad, so bad.
We are also facing significant challenges in terms of asylum and immigration globally. Like the United States has severely restricted immigration policy. Canada is ending its wide spectrum immigration policies, including protections for many asylum seekers. The European Union is becoming increasingly right-wing and anti-immigration. Germany, for instance, shut down its program. What does the global secular humanist atheist community need to do in this regard?
I think it's a sad development. I came to the new world where I think the political correctness has taken over the political spectrum, where everything now it's out bare in the open. I had hoped that whatever trend there is, there has to be a genuine way of vetting individuals. For example, I told you we lost a few individuals to these kind of blasphemy cases in Nigeria. If we had gotten them out safely out of the country, most probably they would have been alive by now. Then those ones that we succeeded in getting into safety in the West were ended up returning back home. In a few cases, not all of them. But then that the system is really, because I could understand if the situation with open door migration where so communities are overwhelmed, the system is overwhelmed, and you could see clerics openly declaring on their pulpits, living in maybe London or New York, declaring that the jihad will come and it will occupy you. So these are people that have already fanaticized the political spectrum in the West. And so because of these Islamist aggressive preaching and sermons, now you have a reactionary trend. Mostly I have observed on Twitter, I think it's a reactionary trend where probably countries are not really asylum seekers based on their faith, based on their ideologies, but that this is a way of conquering the West and taking their space and maybe outbirthing. And we understand, I think I understand that most of these right wing of the spectrum of the online media is because of I think it's reactionary to too much of the influx of the migration without vetting, without the proper whatever. We had hoped that people are embracing enough, and I think the West has embraced enough individuals coming from other countries. They have really shown the tolerance, especially over the past 2 decades. You have seen that this is how maybe individuals got into the West and how they were assimilated and embraced, especially, for example, the Syrians that got into Europe and into Germany. But then you now observe what is the community doing in the West when they are in the West. Are they assimilating? Are they also contributing in a positive way, or are they serving as the bedrock for these fanatics, which are the very minority, even from the Islamic religion? Have they come out to condemn these clerics? For example, if maybe a sheikh is called Sheikh Dawa or sheikh standing in front of maybe a big mall with a microphone just to announce that Islam will take over the West, or will take over this, or will do that. How many people that came from the immigrant background have the courage to come out and counter these? Maybe by blogging, such as what you're doing, or maybe also taking the microphone and protesting that we are against your fanaticism, we are a Muslim community or we are a minority community. and we are here and we love the West and we embrace the culture. We respect their Christmases. We respect their Christmas tree. We love it. We celebrate the Christmas with them just as they celebrate Eid with us. I think the lapses come from my own background. What I try to do as an individual, I thought I am doing what I can in this situation where I'm challenged. And I told you I'm trying to reach out to Muslims in Germany and Muslims in Europe. I've been to several mosques, I've been to several families, and I've been to several Muslim gatherings here in Germany and some cities outside of Germany here in Europe. Even in Kenya, what I'm trying to do with them is trying to give them that courage that please, you don't allow the Islamists to take over the narrative. This is how the Islamophobia definition encompasses all Muslims or all immigrants. If you could come and counter it and give a clear separation between this immigrant community that I know I noticed you don't really try to integrate. I have gone to several meetings and then I saw that, for example, in June, I went to the Muslim community in Bonn, in the city of Bonn, to celebrate the Eid festivities and to speak to the people there. But then I noticed there were no Christians there. There were Northern Nigerian Muslims, there were Somali Muslims, there were Sudanese Muslims. Then I came because I am part of the Northern Nigerian culture, even though I'm not a Muslim. So then I asked them, okay, where are the German Christians? This is Eid. This is supposed to be a festivity of celebration. I said, where are the Nigerian Christian community? Where are the German Christian neighbors that you could invite for the feasting? All I can see is just our people. Where are the others? They said, we don't mingle with them. I said, it's because you are isolating yourselves. You have exclusive districts for Islamism. What is supposed to just normally maybe be maybe an enclave that you could maybe perpetuate your culture, but then that's where you decide to develop all the cultures that we fled from. If you are fleeing from the hijab laws in your country, now you are perpetuating it in the West. If you are fleeing from child marriage, now you are in the system and you are allowing it to happen in your mosques. If you are fleeing from, so what I was trying to do is to engage the Muslim community that you could actually reform Islam. Now you have the best chance. You're in the West, you're in a secular system. You could actually now have the chance to unravel and weave out these issues, gently bringing to fore what we escaped from, the culture we are running away from, but not perpetuating it, not by either we in our silence. When I say we, I mean them, but also I include myself, even though I'm not a Muslim. I said what we are trying to do is to reform Islam. We have the best chance in this century, in these decades that we are here, so that the next generations could maybe wean out of these fanaticism. But then if you just sit idly by and you allow the clerics and these morons on the streets, and then they have the videos and they're sharing it online, what do you think will happen? The West will react. The typical, maybe normal Christian doesn't really care. The liberal people, we don't care as liberals in the West. For example, the white liberals, they don't really care. They love you, they want to hug you. But what happens to these ones that don't really know you? They can't define you until the right wing comes to define who you are. So the right wing now has the momentum. Why do they have the momentum? Because you kept quiet. So it means you are complicit to whatever these hateful clerics are saying. You left the vacuum for them to fill it in. So I think the problem now, most especially as I try to preach over the few months that I'm here, is that the Muslim community have a responsibility, a very big responsibility in the West to take back the narrative. You have already have allies. You have the Gaza allies. You have the liberal allies. You have the atheist community. They love you. They have embraced you for a decade. What do you pay back in return? Confront these clerics, confront these morons. They have the beards, they just sit there and they preach to you. I've seen it several times and it's appalling. Sometimes I even find it very difficult to absorb what they're saying. You're sitting in the West and the government could see you and you are saying that they should kill this or they should kill that, or you have the right to establish your own Sharia or whatever in Milan or in London, or you call other districts. These are the times that you feed the Donald Trump or the MAGA or whatever right wing. You feed them these things, and then they come back to haunt everybody. And now you are spoiling it not just for the Muslim community, but also for the Black immigrant community that are escaping poverty. They have nothing to do with religion. A lot of people crossed into the desert only because they are dying of hunger and poverty. They are crossing over to have a new life. And now you are spoiling it for them. Now everybody is saying maybe they have to send everybody back home. Most times it's about that. And then the racists will come. And when they come, they don't really discriminate. There was a dinner in my organization with my host community, and the head of the organization was mentioning the AFD taking over the country in about 5 years. And I told him, okay, I should leave Germany for Nigeria in 5 years. Is that what you're saying? He said, why do you say so? I said, this is Germany. I don't want to end up in a camp. He said, definitely. It was a very laughable situation because I was just in Dachau. I went to Dachau. I'm living in Nuremberg. I'm seeing all the historical aspects of the Nazi era. But then I told him I don't want to end up in a camp where the AFD will play the Nazi card with me. Then he said, you'll just be safe to know that if you ended up in a camp in Germany, I, as well as a secular humanist, will end up in a camp with you. Then I said, okay, most probably we have to fly back to Africa to start over. So now the Muslims will be the victims of the far right. The Black immigrant will be the victim of the far right. The brown immigrant Asian will also be the victim of the far right, which is taking over the government. Give it 5 years, they will take over the government, most probably because they have the momentum. Then what happens? The smallest minority victims will be the secularists and the atheists and people, the LGBT people that actually have a very life-threatening reason to be in the West. But we don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers. All we need is safety in these kind of cultures or in these kind of societies, because our lives are about maybe our living in back home is death or living. LGBT, blasphemers, apostates, and especially, I think, well, these are the ones that we could mention coming, apostates from Islam. These are the ones that really have the life-threatening situations, but then the situation cannot help us.
Well, okay, I love you, Mubarak. And this is probably one of the few things I don't see eye to eye. So I will agree to disagree when it comes to. I'm just not as hopeful and optimistic as you are. And in recent years, I made peace with myself. I accepted to be labeled as an Islamophobe. I have no problem as an ex-Muslim, militant atheist, secularist from Turkey. I now that being in that camp and identifying self as Islamophobe is not as bad as it sounds. I do have strong convictions when it comes to the effects of Islam to any society, no matter what part of the planet. Yeah, but I hope the Muslim minorities can change their behaviors and attitudes and hopefully change the perception in the Western civilization, Western culture, so the right wing, rise of the right wing can hopefully disappear. But I don't really see it coming. I'm not as hopeful. Now, if you are ready, I have 10 questions for you. And with that, we will conclude Protecting Blasphemers VII talk of 2025.
Okay, before that, let's make a clarification with your stand. So I try as much as I can to create a word. As people ever mention Islamophobia, I try as much as I can now to bring to fore another new word. I coined it Muslimophobia. So I'm trying to also understand where people stand if they say they are Islamophobes. What I try to do, as I am also accused of Islamophobia, I try to tell people we can't really hate Muslims. I don't hate Muslims. I think it should be called Muslimophobia, not Islamophobia. But if it comes to criticizing Islam, then count me as one of the four
But
fronters.
Islamophobia sounds more like hating people than hating the book and the teaching.
Exactly.
When you
So
call it Islamophobia, you are hating the dogma. But when you are
exactly.
calling it Muslimophobia, it's hating the people.
Exactly.
So of
So
course,
so
yeah,
now
humanists.
yeah, so by definition, what I'm trying to bring to fore is that people are bigoted if they are Muslimophobic. You can only be called a prejudicial bigot if you hate Muslims for just being Muslims.
Of course.
But I have already earned the right to criticize Muslims. We all did, being victims of their religion. But also, I think we have the privilege because we come from the culture to also be the ones. We are not the white people. We are not the foreigners. We are the ones that can face our people with the facts and the truths. So I can stand, even though they would hate it, even though they would think it's insulting to them or whatever, I can stand and insult or criticize the culture and bring it bare without any political correctness. Bring it bare that the religion is bullshit, this is bad, this is terrible, what we are doing is wrong. I try as much as I can to do that to their faces. This is confrontational activism that I do. And they understand it, though a lot of them feel bad about it, that you are insulting us, you hate us, you do this. And I told them, this is not about you. Sometimes Islam only perpetuates through you because you allow it to pass down the children. This is how it comes. So what I'm trying to bring maybe to your audience is that for me, Islamophobia and Muslimophobia are two different things. As much as we can redefine Muslimophobia and call it the bad thing, then Islamophobia, which is the threat of Islam, I think it's a very good thing that everybody should understand, that we have to understand the doctrine, which is what we are focusing on, without much minding the people. But then also the Islamists are part of the doctrine. I always bundle them together. So if you could clarify that, I think we can have an understanding. So which
Yes.
one are you? Muslimophobe or Islamophobe?
I do have the phobia against the teachings, against the book, against the dogma, of course. But when people carry out and they're brainwashed with that, does this give you the right to dislike those people? Does it open the door to racism, to fascism? So there is a thin line between all these. So I totally agree with you. I hope that clarifies. Now, my questions. Number one, price of activism versus the value of life. Now, you spent nearly 5 years in prison, missed first years of son's life, and your family paid an enormous emotional and financial cost. Knowing what you know now, was it worth it? If you could go back to 2020, would you still post those Facebook messages?
I think for me, I've always said it. I think you're not the first that asked me, is this worth it? I think sometimes I ask myself, is it worth it? And I'll say, yes, it's worth it. I think okay.
So if you say it's worth it, then what I want to ask is, at what point does personal survival and family responsibility outweigh the duty to speak the truth?
For personal responsibility, I think people sometimes say I was too reckless with my life. Most times people preach that you should also at least consider those that love you or those that are close to you. And this is why, if you noticed, for the most part of my private life until my incarceration, nobody ever knew I had a family. I always stood as a lone wolf. You can't even see the atheist community associated with me, not to talk of the family. So I have decided as much as I can to keep a distance between myself and those associated with me and those that love me or those I call family. I've never lived with my family. This is what people don't even know. I have a wife and son in public, what people could call wife and son, but we have never lived together. One of the reasons is because I've already marked myself that I'll be dead by maybe a mob or by perhaps the terrorists abducted me or assassinated me. So I've never, ever lived with people. I lived by myself. Even when I had a family, it's only brief contacts and then in another city, and then I live by myself. And I try as much as I can to minimize risks, secondary risks to other people. So for me, the conscience is that if people would lose their lives, then it should be me first and nobody else, which is also what I used, the criteria I used to plead guilty. Because if I hadn't and I allowed the case to go on, it would lead to loss of lives. Most probably you have that in the questions, so let's proceed. So for me, it's worth it. It's very worth it because one, for example, a decade ago, no one would dare leave Islam in my part of the world, not just northern Nigeria, in the Sahel region. Hardly. It never happens. But now people could leave Islam. Then if you left Islam, the consequences are dire. The consequences are life-threatening. But now it's never so. You don't even end up in a psychiatric hospital. Even last 2 weeks, two kids from a prominent family in northern Nigeria came out to declare that they are the LGBT. I think that was the narrative I saw online. These are two individuals, but within 2 days, it has fizzled out. When my case started a decade ago, it took a whole, I think, maybe a year until the leaders of Boko Haram heard about the story because it was so reverberating. Actually, it took 2 years. I could remember almost 2 years. People are still riling, like someone could say there is no God, someone could leave Islam, and he shouldn't be. How is he alive? He's supposed to be killed. But now it's so normalized because I broke the ceiling, I broke the pariah status, I broke all those barriers, I pushed back the boundaries that people could declare that they are atheists and the condemnation would only last 24 hours, maximum 48 hours, and then people will move on.
But you say you pushed the boundaries. You say you broke the seal. But, which brings me to my second question. There is a guilty plea controversy. You pleaded guilty to blasphemy charges in 2022, 2 years after.
Yeah.
Contrary to your legal team's strategy, which your lawyers believe may have been under duress or intimidation. But you also later stated you did it to save lives. Not only my life, but people in the state. That's what you said. Some critics might say this guilty plea legitimized Nigeria's blasphemy law and set a dangerous precedent. How do you respond to the argument that your plea, even under duress, may have harmed the broader fight against blasphemy laws by giving them the judicial validation?
Okay, the strategy I most consider first is no life should be lost. Let me give you what would have happened if I hadn't pled guilty. The case would continue in court with subsequent dates, and local media would carry it, and they would broadcast it, and then people pick back the interest. So the same avalanche of opinions and interests that the case generated 2 years prior, and sometimes even to the case of the psychiatric hospital forced hospitalization, the kind of agitation, the kind of fanaticism it generated in northern Nigeria, I don't want that to come back, because if it came back with my trial, what it means is that people will go and kill individuals. It could be the court. They could attack the court. They could overwhelm the police. They could kill either me or the lawyers or all of us. Even the judge would not be spared. So during my prison stay over those 24 months, most times the head of the prison would come to me, and whenever we are discussing about the progress of my case, he would say, "These your people." He always calls them my people because he doesn't belong. He's a Shiite, he's a minority Shiite. So he has that sympathy towards me. So he said, "These your people, they can't really understand your stand. They can't ever handle it. The judge will not handle it. The people cannot handle it. The government will not handle it. And the public cannot handle it. And we cannot protect you. So what you need to do is just give it a diplomatic conclusion, however you can, to save the situation, to save our people, to save yourself, to save the staff, to save the case, and to give the whole meaning, a conclusive meaning to whatever. What he's advising is that I shouldn't confront by standing your ground. I'm his captive. I'm under his protection. I'm in that jail with 2,000 Muslims. These are the same Muslims that could kill you for blasphemy. It doesn't matter. When people hear Muslims, they don't really know the category of Muslims. They don't know the Islamists, they don't know the fanatic, they don't know the radical. Muslim northern Nigerians are only one lockstep behind Boko Haram. This is my people. I know them. It's our culture. Blasphemy in Paris, let's say Charlie Hebdo. Blasphemy in London, let's say someone drew a caricature of the Prophet. Blasphemy in Oslo, someone burning the Quran, leads to killings in northern Nigeria. In fact, I think there was a time only a beauty pageant was supposed to be held in Lagos. A beauty pageant, and it was during the end of the year, which coincided with the Ramadan fasting period. And then it riled up their emotions that people are showing nudity in Nigeria while we are fasting. Allah will not be happy. What happened? 100 people got killed just because people were hosting a beauty pageant in the south of the country, either in the south or in the capital. 100 people. So imagine now a case with an international prominence happening in Kano, a first of its kind, because let's understand something. There are blasphemy cases it's very normal to try blasphemy cases, but these are people from minority sects within Islam. So they also have their own base within their own sects that can also defend their position. But there has never been a case where someone publicly left the religion of Islam, which is the first confrontation, the first assault that they could assume I made against their religion. But then, secondly, accused of insulting Islam. But then also, thirdly, accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad. This is Kano. It's worse than Kandahar. It's far worse than Somalia or whatever you could imagine. They don't care. It's not about me. What they would do is they would go out, find Christians, find other minority tribes, or whomever they can, and kill. They have done it several times. We'd lose elections just because the Muslim candidate lost elections. They would go and kill Christians. This is even before Boko Haram started killings. Muslim fanatics in northern Nigeria have that typical mindset that whenever the name, I just gave you the example of those killed this year, the name Muhammad is mentioned or Islam is mentioned, then they go mad, they go crazy. These are not normal Muslims that you could handshake with. You could do that with them. But then the moment that it's just like a drop of blood in an ocean, and then the sharks come biting. So I know what I kept at bay. I knew what I did. It's a very big sacrifice, but you have to wait. Do we have to wait until people got killed before maybe I could come? And also, let me remind you, this is 2 years after my incarceration. But then 2 years prior, 24 months prior, how long was it in the police custody? 3 months I was in police custody. Do you know what the charges were? There were no charges. They told me, we'll sit you down, we'll put you on a video, you'll make a plea, you'll apologize, you'll convert to Islam, and we will broadcast it. That's the only way out for you. They said they will not take me to court. They said it assuredly, if we took you to court, you'll be killed because the agitation is already for your blood. People don't know where you are. That's why you are safe. So we cannot take you to court. You cannot be tried. Then I asked them, okay, if you can't take me to court, why bring me here? You took me from a city that is far safer. It's still northern Nigeria, but it's still far safer than where you brought me. Why will you want to try me here? Why not take me to Lagos and try me? Why not take me to Calabar or to any coastal city? Why must you try me in Kano State? It's just like you took let's say you took Miss Ayan Hirsi Ali in maybe New York, and then you decided to try her in Kandahar or in Qom in Iran. You understand the scenario. So I asked, what motive do you have if you don't want this kind of breakdown of law and order? But also, you have to also realize that these are low IQ people. They are not smart. They know they could end up with this situation, but they knew who to blame. It'd still be me. They will not be blamed for the unprofessional acts. It still would be me, because if people killed, maybe someone went and they killed maybe 30 people, then the government will heap the blame on me that I caused killings. You understand that? It will still be, firstly, they accuse me of saying things that could incite violence through the blasphemy charges. But now, if people actually died, the charges will be even stronger that you have already incited the violence and that people got killed. Then I know then the case will never end. And in the end, a lot of people will have to die the more, especially if I was sentenced. I can never be free. The government will make sure that you are forever silenced because you are now a dangerous person. Even though the clerics are doing the same things. The clerics are the ones inspiring people to kill in the name of Boko Haram. The clerics in the mainstream are the ones inspiring people to kill as ISIS. They are the ones agitating normal northern Nigerian Muslims to kill rampantly with no accountability, such as the blasphemy cases I told you. It all emanates from the mosques and the pulpits. These are clerics doing the same preaching, but the government will never focus on them. But for me to counter one of these kind of situations, then I was accused of incitement. So if someone will come and say, okay, we want this person to be killed because Allah says he should be killed, then that person will come to counter that I'm not supposed to be killed. Your Allah is stupid to say I should be killed. Then the government will come and take this person trying to defend himself and feed him to the mob.
Thank you. Next question. The privilege of exile. You are now safe in Germany with a fellowship, international support, and a platform to speak. Hundreds of Nigerian atheists and humanists remain trapped. They don't have the international profile. They don't have the legal team. No resources you had. Some might even say they are in danger precisely because they are associated with you. Or the movement you led. Does your exile represent a victory for the movement, or does it highlight how only the famous blasphemers get saved while unknown ones are abandoned?
Thank you for this question. I think it also now brings to fore what I earlier mentioned, that I never wanted to leave Nigeria because I don't want to leave the congregation or the friends behind. I always felt that, firstly, you remember a decade ago, that's when the case started. If I had left in 2014, then we wouldn't have had even the atheist community to begin with. So I stayed over. I tried as much as I can to coordinate and to create the society, and we helped ourselves, especially with the networking and the organizations that I worked with. This is how we got students into schools. This is how we got the safe houses. This is how we conduct our meetings, and then we fundraised with our own funds. Especially for me, I think I've sacrificed so much that I have never kept any property in my name. Everything I got what went back to the humanist community and the secularist community. For me, what I have sacrificed for the community is also what drives me, and this is also what encourages me. And I think one of the reasons I even had to leave Nigeria is because the atheist community are saying, first, you have to go. We cannot really protect ourselves until we have someone in that kind of position that could now maybe channel help back towards us. This is one of the channels that they think that I can help beyond, and which is also part of the reasons that my focus is still back home. And I think that's why also I want to go back home. I have avoided the asylum. I'm here. I was supposed to be on asylum. I refused that. I said I have to go home. There will be a time that I will go home, most probably in 2 to 5 years, and I will return home. That's why we are still focused on pushing the envelope back home, that we have to make a stand. We have to claim that space that we've already created for ourselves. We already have that space in northern Nigeria. They have accommodated us. As I told you, people now can come out and say they are atheists. The condemnation will come, but you will hardly hear the death threats. People will say, oh, no, Mubarak has already done it. What has happened? We have already heard about it. And even the blasphemy, that's what happens with blasphemy. Firstly, apostasy, then blasphemy, then confrontational activism, such as what I'm doing, like saying it to your faces that Islam is a terrorist religion, something like that. These are the things that I do to push the envelope because, one, people have to know that you are not afraid of them, you are not ashamed of being whom you are. And also, they have to accommodate the fact that you belong to that society and you're not going anywhere. I'm going back in about 5 years, hopefully, if we succeed in organizing ourselves. And I'm presenting myself as part of the political foray for candidacy, either for Senate or for the presidency. This is part of the plan. I don't have to win, but the presence matters. It matters if I'm present. So I'm going back. I've never abandoned the humanist community. And even as I am here, as I told you, my resources still go back home to these people. And I think we have sacrificed enough. And hopefully by the time I'm back, it will even be much, much safer because as we push the envelope, as we try to stand our grounds, even as I survived it, I think there's still chance to push back and hold what we have created, the space we've created.
Would you be able to run for president with your existing current conviction and sentence?
Yeah, where the case is not over yet. We are still at the Supreme Court.
Okay, I see.
So one of the reasons I have to be here is because we have to await the sentence. If it's in my favor, it means the government will pay for the atrocities they committed. But if it's not in my favor, I stand the risk of serving the rest of the 40 years in jail.
Okay.
Before you go to your next question, give me a break of about 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Moving on to my next question. You come from a prominent Muslim family in northern Nigeria, where Islam is deeply intertwined with cultural and social identity. Many African Muslims argue that Western secular activists like Sir Richard Dawkins promoted an aggressive new atheism that showed cultural insensitivity and even racism toward Muslim community. As an African atheist, do you think the secular movement has been guilty of cultural imperialism? Should atheist activism in Africa look fundamentally different from Western atheism?
I think people misunderstand some facts or they have forgotten some facts. aggressive atheism or fanatical atheism or new atheism with that vigor that was prevalent a decade ago or 2 decades ago actually is a reactionary atheism from the September 11th and the jihadi movements and the attacks in capital cities and the terrorism and the rise of Al Qaeda and then ISIS. So there is always a cultural backlash to these things when something very dangerous and very virulent comes to terrorize and torment society and culture, then there has to be a reaction. And most people also accuse me of being part of the militant atheism. I don't really feel bad about it because also I started mine in reaction to Boko Haram. I was very comfortable with just being an atheist by myself, but I couldn't hold it in anymore when Boko Haram started the killings, publicly beheading people and killings and bombings in all northern cities and then Nigeria and then the Sahel region. So it always comes to the question that what are you fighting for? We're fighting for secularism, but sometimes we're fighting for our lives. So it depends what mood the world is at. For example, if the world is only fighting against maybe religious, like Christian religious intolerance against the LGBT or against maybe Bible and abortion and this and that, prayer in the classrooms, then you don't need that fanatical, but that very radical atheism where you are too confrontational. Okay. But also, if you are in a situation or in a culture such as mine, now the Sahel region is very combustible, very dangerous, not just for the atheist community, but also for Muslims themselves, and then for Christians, and then for other tribes that are on the fringes of the society. Then I think we need the militant atheism. So this dichotomy where it's European atheism, it's African atheism, I think it doesn't matter. It always has to do with what you're confronting, what you're trying to fight. What we're trying to fight is most, for the first instance, the first priority is the peace. We want to bring back the peace against radical jihadi Islamism. But then also there are times when you're only fighting a milder maybe challenge, such as, for example, government high-handedness. Maybe the government doesn't tolerate criticism of politics. Maybe they want to introduce prayer in the classroom. And these are times that maybe you don't have to be too radical about. For me, this is what I always consider. What am I confronting? What am I fighting? Has the situation changed? If Islam could reform itself and then we don't have the jihadists in the streets and rampant, reckless preaching of hatred amongst the Muslim community, then I think we can also now maybe shift and refocus our activism towards something else. So for me, it's not necessarily whether the culture is there or maybe there is a difference or dichotomy between European and then maybe African sort of things. But then also in my own style of what I could call confrontational atheism, is that I do the carrot and stick approach with my people. If you notice, if you see me in public gatherings, you'll see me dressed as my people, the way the Hausa Muslim would dress. I try to mingle with them. I try to assimilate in the culture. I try to celebrate the Eid. I try to be as cultural as possible and as close as possible, which is also why it gave me that privilege that I could criticize the religion confrontationally and still get away with it because I'm still seen as part of that community because I've never really removed myself from them. Sometimes if I'm criticizing Muslims, I'll say, we are the ones doing the killings. We are the ones doing this. We are the ones doing that. I try to bring myself as close as I can so I don't really make them feel inferior to my own activism. I try as much as I can to identify with them, but then still tell them the truth to their faces. Sometimes they feel it's hatred. Sometimes they say it's not Islam. You just hate us. You just hate Muslims. And I'll say whatever you could say, but I know you're only one lockstep behind Boko Haram. If Boko Haram was killing Christians, you don't really care. It's now that they're killing you, you are really angry about it. So we know all these things. So for me, I think what matters is what they are confronting. 2 decades ago, we are just battling Al Qaeda and bombings in Madrid, bombings in London, Bataclan bombings, assassinations in Charlie Hebdo. These are the times that you have to also make a presence. You have to counter it. It's just like the radical, what you call the right-wing radicalism that you're seeing now is a prevalence against what? Against migration, against influx of random people that most probably are not being thankful. It's exactly what Donald Trump said. I reasoned with that when he said that they are not appreciating it. You came into new cultures that took you in, gave you accommodation, gave you embrace. What do you do in return? You're supposed to be appreciative. You're supposed to help the society. And whatever voices you hear from your own community trying to criticize these things, what do? You counter that. You don't just keep quiet and then give in to the radicalism. So the right is also now fighting against these kind of trends. So I think atheism, it was only fighting jihadism. And now if we don't have the jihadi factor, then maybe we could move on to something less confrontational.
I was just saying that's not gonna happen. Not anytime soon, but yeah.
You're pessimistic, I'm optimistic.
Speaking of pessimism, let's go to my next question. When atheism turns wild. In December 2024, 1 year ago, a Saudi ex-Muslim atheist drove a car into a Christmas market in Magdeburg, Germany, killing multiple people. His radicalization came partly from feuds with an ex-Muslim organizations in Germany, the very community that saved you, actually. And this tragedy reveals that ex-Muslim activists can become radicalized toward violence too. They are human, right? So does the secular movement need to do more self-examination about extremism within its own ranks? What responsibility do we have when our community produces violent acts?
Firstly, I disagree that person is a secular humanist. He could just be an atheist. An atheist may be just someone without a conscience. An atheist could do anything, but he cannot claim secular humanism, especially the humanism aspect, and then go and kill people. If he has disgruntlement with the maybe secular humanist communities or ex-Muslim communities, I should have seen him maybe with a car ramming into their offices in whichever city he existed. This man is a hypocritical, most probably fanatic Muslim, just trying to use the asylum process or maybe using the tag of being ex-Muslim only to assimilate in the Western culture. This is what I can conclude. This is a man that hates Christians. This is a man that hates white people. This is a man that hates the West. And he has exhibited that tendency, which is typical of what people that come from that culture always exhibit. So he is, by my definition, a fake atheist. He's a fake ex-Muslim. He's a fake secularist. He is a typical fanatic terrorist jihadist that would hide behind whatever convenience he could to get into the West and assimilate and maybe take advantage of the situation where we have resources as ex-Muslims or as secularists trying to maybe give succor, give maybe a community for this kind of an individual. But I am doubtful that this person is this secularist that would come and, because if you have a disgruntlement, this is where you should go and channel your rage and madness. Go and maybe attack the ones that enraged you, not children in Magdeburg. If you go and kill children, you are typical the jihadist that you are.
Thank you. And my next question is about the blasphemy business, which we discussed earlier in Pakistan. So the 2025 blasphemy business scandal revealed that the majority of blasphemy victims in Pakistan are actually Muslims. 947 Muslims compared to 421 non-Muslims accused of blasphemy between 1947 to 2021. So hundreds of young Muslim men are being entrapped and extorted. Does this change how we should frame the fight against blasphemy laws? Should the secular movement be building more coalitions with progressive Muslims who are also victims rather than positioning this as a battle of Islam versus secularism?
In my capacity, if you could recall, what I tried to do is also part of my work when I was free back in Nigeria was trying to also reform Islam from within, try to convince people that we can actually work with other communities and work. And because I always emphasize that the first victims of Islamic radicalism are mostly, firstly, the Muslim community. Sometimes they are the primary victim due to the indoctrination and the restrictions and all the blackmail, the violence and whatever. But then also, if the jihadism emanates from the community and it finishes with whomever they could target close by, what happens is that it implodes, it comes back in and still devours the members of the community. So Muslims are still the primary targets, and they come back to also be the tertiary targets. The other communities are only secondary targets. So I believe that we could help Muslims wean out of these frozen. And I'm in a desperate race in my own personal struggles. I feel that the race is slipping away now, that we are in a race that we have confronted Islamism so much that we cornered it along with when we were doing the new atheist movement. We cornered Islamism to a point that they had to look with introspection to whatever doctrine they had. But then when I was away half a decade and then I came back, and now they have the upper hand. Now they are the ones fanaticizing. They are the ones in the forefront. They are no longer hiding it. They are now in public. They are saying things, anti-Semitic things, and sometimes anti-Western things publicly. I have seen a protest in London where a microphone was being shouted. In the microphone, they were shouting, rape their daughters, rape their children. They are saying things about Jews, I think. So I was so shocked that people could really do that in the Western cities. You can't dare do that in Dubai. You don't do that in Qatar. You don't do that in Saudi Arabia. You'll be arrested. There are a lot of preachers that can't dare do what they are preaching in the Middle East. So you see, the Middle East has succeeded in doing exactly what you're just mentioning, which is trying to counter it from within their culture. And then now the freedoms of the West has allowed for this radicalism, which is, I think, the responsibility of the government, because if they had tamed this situation by also trying as much as they can to be politically strong in terms of confrontational preaching, then I think there wouldn't have been these reactionary radical people coming back to maybe rile up the masses for right-wing takeover.
My next question is that since you were imprisoned in 2020, Afghanistan has fallen to Taliban, as we mentioned previously, and Syria again has fallen to Islamist forces. Bangladesh has seen an Islamist influenced so-called revolution, and Western countries are closing their borders to refugees. Europe is shifting right wing. Trump is back in the US with harsh immigration policies. Even Canada is restricting asylum. So where exactly are we supposed to tell atheists to flee to? Has the secular movement been selling false by focusing on rescue, when rescue is literally becoming impossible?
The problem is that we don't have the numbers, because if we can ally ourselves with the Muslims, because mostly if you notice that most of these rescues and the blasphemy cases are mostly from the Muslim communities. If we can ally ourselves with secular Muslims, then most probably we could succeed in confronting jihadism and radicalism right in our own homes. One of the reasons why I want to go back home to Nigeria is so I can be in person changing the trajectory of Nigeria. I
So
am
your answer is basically networking.
networking, but also I think working with the Muslim community, because you can't, from outside, the West cannot reform Islam. The West cannot reform these ideologies. The West, I think what most probably the West is doing is isolationism now. They want to move away. They don't want, it's not just the people with genuine cases such as asylum seekers. They don't want anybody, colored persons. They don't want a black. They don't want an Arab. They don't want an Asian. They don't want anybody to come. So I think we have to stay home and also change our societies. This is the only way out.
What about the potential effect of organized atheism, organized secularism, organized humanism per se?
It serves a purpose if we can create our own communities. The moment you left religion or you became a secularist, the next thing is the challenge of isolation, the challenge of the ostracism, the boycott. Your own immediate family and community starts isolating you, start throwing you away, shutting, giving you cold shoulders, and then you lose these kind of social connections, and then that's when the depression sets in. So I think we have already succeeded in creating our own community, and especially in modern times with the internet, the cyberspace, We have already created, we bypassed all these social restrictions and we became our own community, whether it's online, whether it's in cities that we can network ourselves, and we have done that effectively. So I think that in the future, what we could also do is try as much as we can. For me personally, I believe that if we are in positions, because we've come of age, we started in our 20s, now we're in our 40s and 50s. Which age do we start all these? When you have the gray hair, where do you end up? The retirement home, which is politics, is not the care home. We are not in our 70s. So we have to join the fray. I believe that if we have written so many letters to diplomats, to government officials, that please, we have this individual incarcerated, we have that. So we are lobbyists. We reduced ourselves to lobbyists. But how about gathering these our resources and being the persons in office that people have to lobby with? You can imagine if, for example, you happen to be a mayor in a city, in a Turkish city, maybe you could have more power than maybe a Mamdani in New York or maybe a Khan in London. If I were to be a senator or a governor in my country, imagine maybe I could take asylum seekers. If I am the president of Nigeria in half a decade, I am sure within half a decade, Nigeria will be a hub where maybe people escaping persecution from Afghanistan could come and seek protection in Abuja, and I'll grant it. So there are a lot of things we could achieve when we stop being the marginalized people and now normalizing ourselves within mainstream society. It's a very big gamble, but I am ready to take it. I've already taken so many gambles, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But it's another gamble that I think is worth taking. If we could mainstream ourselves, then we don't need to be lobbyists. We can be the people that decide the fate. Because actually, I believe that we are the ones hovering over the maze of society. Society with all these ones are right wing, these ones are left wing, these ones are radical Islamists. They're all in a maze, blind. But then the moment you are secular, the moment you have that superior rational thinking, you're already hovering above the maze. So you could already see where to solve the problem, where these people are hidden, where these people are hiding, where these people cannot make breakthroughs. I believe we have that better eyesight that we could channel society to a better trajectory, especially for me, the Sahel region and the northern Nigerian region and the Nigerian state. I believe I could change their trajectory.
Thank you. And my next question is a family question about family betrayal and forgiveness. Your own father, a senior Islamic authority, orchestrated your involuntary detention in a psychiatric ward in 2014, 10 years ago, because you became an atheist. That's a profound betrayal by the person who should protect you most. Have you forgiven him? Do you have any relationship with your family now? And more broadly, should atheist activists from religious families be expected to maintain those relationships? Or is complete separation sometimes necessary for survival?
Okay, for me, let me tell you what happened just Christmas time last year. I went home to Kano State. I flew home from my hiding in Abuja. I flew home and I went to meet. Definitely, I have good relationship with my mother. I have good relationship with my siblings. But then I have not spoken to my dad or my uncles, those ones that took me to the psychiatric hospital, and my senior brother, not because I don't speak with them, but no, because they have ostracized me. They have broken ties with me. So they're the ones with the grudge. They're the ones wanting me dead. But I decided to keep contact. My brother has not spoken to me in a decade, but I flew into Kano State and I hugged him. I embraced him. I told him, whatever you did, you're the one that gave me the injection. You're the one that helped the doctors with the crazy tag. And I forgive you. You don't really know what you're doing. You're a medical doctor. So and he spent a decade in Saudi Arabia. But you're still the one telling people that I don't believe there was Adam and Eve, and so I was delusional. I believe you are delusional. You don't know it yet. But I forgive you. So I hugged my brother. This is my senior brother. I went and I sat and I ate a meal with one of the uncles that put me in a psychiatric hospital a decade ago. And I still went again to another uncle that helped in the same situation. And I sat with him with his wife and we spoke for about 30 minutes. And then I met my dad and I sat with him and I spoke to him for about an hour. At first, he was shocked. And I don't think he would have been comfortable, but then my mom was there. and I sat with him and we discussed. I told him that I got out of jail. I knew he was the one that gave the nod. He was the one that kept me there. But I smiled and I told him I have no grudges. And we discussed life, we discussed politics. And one reason I do that is because I want to normalize whatever tag they have in their head. My father, a decade ago, wrote that I'm a monster because I became an atheist. He said for Muhammad, he wrote it in his articles that for Muhammad, he could do anything, meaning for Muhammad, he could kill me. But I still sat with him. I still tried to keep the connection so that he does see that I'm not a monster, I'm not a failure, I'm not evil. Boko Haram is evil, but they don't see it that way. They believe that I was worse than Abu Bakr Shekau, I was worse than Osama bin Laden just for being an atheist. So I'm trying to, as much as I can, keep in contact with these people. And not just my family. Let me tell you, the people that orchestrated my abduction also, when I got out, started reaching out to me. You could imagine reaching out to me. Some of them were calling me on phone. Some of them were writing me WhatsApp messages. And I knew them, and I knew they tried to kill me. But what do? I take the phone and I greet them, and they express their own regrets. I don't know how sincere it is. Sometimes maybe it's because they think now I'm out. Maybe I'll mention their names and then they will lose their jobs and stuff like that. But I don't do any of that thing. A decade ago, when they did the same thing in the psychiatric hospital, I kept the relationship with them. However, they try as much as they can to be evil, I try to be good to them. In fact, I went to the prison I was held. Immediately I was released. I went back to the prison. I embraced the wardens, I embraced the keepers. I went into the police station, the same police headquarters, and I met with my captives, the ones that kept me in a cell for 3 months. And I discussed with them. I hugged them, I held their hands, and I told them I'm alive. Maybe you tried to kill me, but I'm alive. But I don't harbor grudges. I'm a humanist. I don't harbor grudges. So this is what I do to my enemies. I believe that the efforts they are making, as long as they keep failing, then I keep proving them wrong. That you believe I'm evil, I should die, but then you'll see that I'm not evil. So a lot of them that started with frowning, with machinations and plottings to see me dead, most times now they greet me, how are you? How are your family? I hope you are good. I hope you have forgiven me. So these are people that are taken aback, in shock that I could be this magnanimous. What I always tell people is that if you harm me, I have a big heart. I can forgive you. But don't let me see you harming others. Most times I hardly forgive people that are harming other people. But if you're harming me, I don't harbor grudges.
So you received awards, international recognition, and solidarity from the global humanist community. Humanist International, the United Nations, the United States Congress, the countless organizations campaigned for you. Yet you still spent nearly 5 years in prison. And Nigeria's blasphemy laws are stronger than ever. Over 800 people imprisoned as of now, the highest ever. If all that international pressure couldn't free you faster or change the law, then what's the point? Is the secular movement just ended in solidarity that makes Western humanists feel good but achieves not? What do you think?
Firstly, the success we could record is that I am alive.
It's my camera. I don't know how to fix my camera. It just zooms in and out. And I'm just gonna take this part out. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
All right. So I think the success, I could call it a success, is that firstly, no matter how many decades an individual spends in jail, the fact that he came out alive in one piece is a success in itself. So it's not a defeat that I got a sentence. It's not a defeat that I got out late. I think that what we try to count is how successful we were in keeping ourselves alive, because situations such as this could easily deteriorate and people could vanish without the international upheaval and the international riling up of emotions and the petitions and the activism and the noise making that actually got the government's attention to make me a high profile or important prisoner. What it meant is that they couldn't just vanish me, because life is very easy to vanquish in Africa. I'm sure that an individual could be killed and nothing would happen. It doesn't matter. A family could kill me. My own family could kill me. The government could kill you. people are being killed in the same police headquarters that I was kept. If they determined that they would kill you, even terrorists, most times they don't even get to the police custody. They are killed in the forests. Sometimes a political dissident, sometimes it's just a phone call and someone will just come and kill you. So the fact that I survived it, or some of us in the incarceration survive it, I think is a success in itself. But then also there are other consequences that we could count. For example, it gives you that sense of community that you're not forlorn. What if I was taken and everybody kept quiet? Then I'm alone, I'm by myself. Then when I survive it, I would realize that nobody really cared. But now we know that we have the community, and at least we have the lobbying community that are reaching out and trying to do whatever they can. It's not enough. We're not saying it's enough. I think we are being pushed back. But then in these kind of maybe a terrible prevailing wind opposite of the direction of travel, we could say that one stride is counted by however backwards the wind pushes us, but it's still one stride. We could be pushed backwards, but still we are trying to make the effort. And sometimes we are impatient beings, human beings. We don't really count our steps until when it has been achieved. I could give you an example. For example, a lot of people, Martin Luther King, in his lifetime, maybe he has never seen what depth he has achieved, or maybe Mandela, or even the figures, the religious figures. Most times, the Jesuses, the Buddhas, the Mohammeds, in their lifetimes, they have not seen what maybe earth moving scenarios they have achieved in their lifetimes. They wouldn't see that. So I don't think in our lifetimes, or maybe in our young years, we could really quantify these kind of achievements until probably on an epitaph, maybe Onur, and then they will write something under what you achieved, and then Mubarak, what has he achieved? And sometimes maybe it will be only in the maybe the texts, but then subsequently people will read about it. Now we have the internet, we have text, we have books. So historically, these are achievements. That's why we have the Nietzsche's, that's why we have the Copernicus, the Angelo, and whoever achieved something. So I don't think we should quantify it with these small steps that we're counting. But sometimes it's the whole life what we could achieve in the end, or maybe generations that we could inspire.
Okay, you mentioned quantifying progress. My last question, by the way, if you quantify progress and the development benefit aspect of religion, okay, let me rephrase this. Some economists argue, development economists argue that religion, smoking kills. So what was I saying? Some development economists argue that religious institutions, mosques, churches, Islamic charities provide essential social services, community support, and safety nets in countries like Nigeria, where government has failed. When we critique Islam in northern Nigeria, you are not just critiquing theology, you are critiquing institutions that feed people, educate children, provide healthcare. So what's the secular alternative? Can atheist organizations actually replace the social infrastructure that religion provides in developing countries? Or are we just dismantling systems without offering a viable replacement?
Firstly, I think we have to have the numbers. Religions did not just achieve this in the last 2-3 decades that we could say modern atheist movements started. Whatever secularists achieved in those years, they were underground. If they were Illuminati, if they were Freemasons, if they were this, if they were that, I don't think they really developed any secularism beyond their own means, whatever resources they could gather for themselves. We are the ones that are doing now the new atheism with selflessness, with advocacy, with documentations, with actual confrontation to the powers. So I could only count maybe 2-3 decades of our efforts, most at max, maybe 3 decades. But then count that these institutions that you mentioned have had a head start of centuries, sometimes millennia. And they achieved that, not if you could understand, they achieved that not necessarily with cleanliness, not with clean resources. They didn't come with charity. They came with swords. They came with bombs. They came with violence. They took over states. They took over cities. They killed people. They took over their resources. So they started with theft. We are not thieves. We started with pens. We didn't have bombs. We didn't have weapons. We didn't have rifles. So I think we can achieve a lot with whatever lean means that we could muster. We are mostly sacrificing our own safety, resources, and comfort for these kind of causes. But then these institutions have already looted communities, cities, countries, cultures, and taken over territories so vast that you could only quantify it with maybe empires of ancient. They're actually practically empires. So I don't think we can compare. It's not fair if you compare how they achieved that, because they have those resources. And even to the point that if you notice, we don't have the numbers. We are a minority in a very large world of 8 billion people. But then the 8 billion, if you could count how many Muslims are there and how many want to progress the Islamic doctrine, how many wants to progress the Christian doctrine, how many wants Buddhism to succeed, how many wants Hinduism to take over India, you could see that their ideology is far older than us, and then they have their own determination. They have the population, they have the resources, and people are blackmailed to pay into their coffers with salvation. You understand? People have to pay on Sunday, some people have to pay on Friday, other people have to give offerings whenever they see the statue of Buddha. This is how they accumulate the gold and the resources. Nigerian pastors, some of the richest in the world, are building churches in the amount of billions. They have private jets. A Nigerian pastor would stand on a Sunday and he would cry that he has a dream that God has asked him to raise 100 billion naira. And that same Sunday, he will raise that 100 billion. This is what they could achieve. But you and I know that we can't stand and call for $10,000 in fundraising. Most probably, in rare cases such as myself, I know they could raise that. They have done that. But then how many, if you call maybe someone low profile and you want to raise such amount of money to rescue them, could you achieve that? You can't. I can't. So we have that constraints. And also, we don't blackmail people with life after death. I can't blackmail an atheist community that I can give them another life so they could raise us the money. So it's not practical for us. But also, I believe that one success is also worth emulating. We have succeeded in keeping ourselves alive. We have succeeded in creating our own community. We have succeeded in making a presence in a very hostile world, very intolerant world, especially the Muslim world, such as Turkey, Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. I think these are what we can count. It doesn't maybe have to be monetary resources, but if we could do this and then maybe perpetuate through the next generation, then as I said, maybe our epitaphs would read what we could achieve.
Nice answer. Thank you. Guys, please this video, share this video, subscribe to our channel, and help us grow bigger. Make this channel boom. Thank you, Mubarak, and all of our viewers for this enlightening and important conversation. While we are ending Protecting Blasphemers VII in 2025, I would like to tell you a little bit about our podcast. Podcast for Inquiry. Everyone should be able to find Podcast for Inquiry by CFI Canada in their favorite podcast app. We shine light and talk about the most controversial topics and controversial names. Our host is my dear friend Leslie Rosenblatt, the secular chair of Center for Inquiry Canada. I promise you will love the Podcast for Inquiry series. As I mentioned at the beginning, CFI Canada is Canada's only national nonprofit educational charity for science and free. We hope that those of you who are not already members will consider purchasing a membership. We will include a link into our membership page in the chat window. Not only does your membership provide financial support to CFIC, it also adds your voice to others who support science, critical thinking, and secularism. As we grow in numbers, so does our influence with government decision makers and the public opinion that guides them. So we can save people like Mubarak. We advocate for evidence-based decisions on government policy, healthcare, public education, and human rights. If concerns like climate change, blasphemy laws, education curriculum, medical pseudoscience are important to you, please become a CFI member. In today's landscape, there are too many people spreading misinformation and trying to mislead you. Without us, the major influencers will continue to be the large, self-interested groups and institutions that benefit from making baseless claims and spreading pseudoscientific nonsense. So please consider a membership. It's only $50 per year. Finally, I would like to thank all CFIC volunteers who pulled this event together. If you would like to volunteer for CFIC, you can sign up on our website. There are many interesting positions for you to choose from. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Mubarak, my dear friend. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.